This young man has been the sole heir to the empire's wealthiest ducal family since birth. Not only is he handsome, but he's also had a genius for business since he was a kid. A true-born leader and a legendary tycoon in the making. A typical day for this rich kid starts with signing $100 billion contracts in the morning, and by the afternoon he's casually bankrupting his rivals and sweeping up their assets. Living a life of royal luxury, Fan thought he'd be set for life. But reality hit him hard, and it didn't miss a beat. It all started on a beautiful, clear day. Disaster struck out of nowhere when Fan was suddenly hit by a bolt of lightning. In that split second of dizziness and vulnerability, a strange soul suddenly invaded his mind. The intruder hadn't even finished celebrating its supposed success when Fan snapped at it, "Get the hell out! Take your head elsewhere to play. This place is already way too crowded." It really was crowded, and Fan realized this entity was trying to take over his body. Without a second of hesitation, he poured every bit of his remaining mana into a fierce counterattack completely the opposite of the intruder's grand entrance. The intruder shrieked in pain and was quickly shattered into pieces. After crushing the soul, Fan immediately absorbed a portion of its power. Then, a flood of strange, chaotic memories rushed into his mind, leaving Fan stunned as he processed information he had never known before. "Young master, are you okay?" Hai's panicked voice rang out as he saw Fan suddenly collapse. A bizarre string of text appeared before his eyes, carrying a prophecy of world destruction. The 72 demons of King Solomon would rise again to spread chaos across the human realm. Even more terrifying, the descendant of the first emperor Entamien, along with the young master of the Fohlenberg family, would join forces with the demons, leading to Fan being expelled from his family, left with nothing, and forced to wander as a beggar. A fate worse than death unfolded before him, leaving him horrified. "Beggar me, lose all my money and get kicked out of the house, going from rich to dirt poor, who could stand that, from that day on?" Fan did everything he could to find the source of that soul, why it tried to possess him, and why it carried memories of that terrifying future even while sitting in class. His mind kept racing until the teacher's voice broke through. "All right, that concludes our lesson." Despite his efforts, Fan hadn't gained any useful info. However, one thing was certain: that prophecy was slowly coming true. Knowing about certain events in advance, he had already maneuvered ahead of the curve to make a tidy profit, with money pouring into his pockets like water. Even so, he wasn't happy. The more money he made, the closer his tragic end seemed to get. He told himself he had to verify just how accurate this prophecy really was. "You can't live in peace like this, can you?" Just as he got home, Hai was already waiting and asked how his classes went. Fan just replied, "The usual." Seeing his master looking so deep in thought, Hai suggested, "Would you like some coffee, sir?" After a casual nod, Fan took the newspaper from the butler's hand. To catch up on the news, he noticed Hai's strange expression and asked, "What's wrong, Hai? Something bothering you lately?" "Sir, you've seemed a bit anxious lately." Fan calmly retorted, "Since when?" Hai replied, "About half a year ago." Hai still couldn't shake his concerns, saying that lately his young master had been acting absent-minded and making strange decisions not at all like his usual meticulous style. The butler even muttered to himself, wondering if it was a lingering effect from the lightning strike. Fan just silently cursed effect from the lightning. "Your head." However, Hai had to admit, strangely enough, those decisions always turned out to be correct. While flipping through the newspaper, Fan suddenly froze when he saw the name Entamien. He wondered in shock, did that guy really possess him already? Without wasting another second, Fan jumped up and declared he had to head south immediately, leaving Hai behind, bewildered, and asking if he needed any more information. Where are you rushing off to like you're being chased by ghosts? Young Master Hai could only watch his masters retreating back, still holding the cup of coffee. By now, Fan An was galloping alone, heading straight for the southern area of the Royal Academy on Badian Island. This was a vast marshland created by magic, located in the heart of the inland sea. As he spurred his horse through the woods, Fan An told himself that today he absolutely had to confirm whether that prophecy was true or not. Out of everything he had read, 3 things haunted him most. First, Fernand Folenberg would be stripped of his status. Second, his own future would be incredibly bleak. And the third, which was the most horrific, he would end up as a destitute beggar. No, that can't be. Fan An screamed internally at the thought of himself in rags, face smudged with dirt, without a single penny to his name. He continued to recall the next scary milestones. The 72 demons of Solomon would return after thousands of years, and finally the appearance of the destined hero who would defeat the demons and save the world. None other than Entamien. This name was already famous. Everyone in the empire knew of the descendants of the royal family that founded the Kalinos Empire. The Amion bloodline once possessed supreme power, founding both the empire and the 5 surrounding kingdoms, but now all that glory had faded, leaving only a declining family with a reputation that had completely crumbled. What a waste! Where has all that glory gone? The prophecy clearly stated that the descendant of the old royal family was the one tasked with saving the world from demons. Right after passing the entrance exam instead of going to the dorms, Entamien went straight to the southern marsh, aiming to find the map left behind by his ancestors. From the moment he set foot in the academy, every event around him was written in detail like a novel. Fan An told himself that he just needed to verify if this guy was actually doing exactly what the prophecy said to confirm its authenticity. Because besides being the protagonist, Ent was the direct cause of the tragedy that led to Fan An being ordered into exile and becoming a destitute beggar. "This is crazy, Fan," An shouted while spurring his horse. He couldn't understand why that guy hated him so much that he'd push him into such a horrific disaster. Even though many parts of the memory were blurry or couldn't be read clearly, the direct cause of his tragic end was recorded as joining forces with demons. For a money-obsessed guy like Fan An, doing something so absurd and unprofitable was impossible. Well, that's hard to say. Who knows, maybe the demons are really good at tempting people. He had to be around here somewhere. Fan An stopped his horse in the middle of the dark forest to observe. According to what he knew, Ent was looking for a secret dungeon in the marsh where the sword of the first emperor was kept. That sword wasn't just an ordinary object. It held the soul of Anfan Fashion, the first and most powerful royal knight. If the first emperor, that sword is no ordinary relic. It carries the soul of Anfan Fashion, the very first and most powerful royal knight. If the prophecy is true, he is the world's only hope, a legendary hero. Fan An wore a calculating smile, thinking to himself, if this guy couldn't handle demons, he would have gotten rid of him long ago. But the vision of being reduced to a tattered beggar by this guy still made Fan An shudder. Suddenly he froze. He caught a sharp metallic scent of blood lingering in the air. Just as the prophecy foretold on the way to the dungeon, he would be severely wounded by a Crocker's attack. Despite his heroic potential right now, he hadn't fully awakened his power, while the Crocker was the apex predator and most formidable beast in this swamp. Following the trail of blood splattered on the ground, leading to a giant ancient tree, Fan and realized this was the dungeon entrance. Everything was unfolding exactly as the prophecy had set out. So was the day he'd be forced to become a beggar, fast approaching Fan An hid behind a bush, his red eyes observing intently. "All right, let's see if Ent has entered yet." Seeing the silhouette of Enta Min, standing outside in blood-stained armor, Fan An couldn't help but be shocked. "Why is this bastard here? Damn it, he hasn't even entered the dungeon. Yet, did I arrive too early?" Despite his surprise, he kept his composure, stepped out, and questioned, "This is a restricted area for freshmen. You know that, right?" To Ent's astonishment, Fan An coolly replied that no one in the empire could be unaware of the descendant of the first emperor. Upon hearing the name Fan An Fulenberg, Ent was startled. Fan An immediately corrected his junior's attitude. "You should call me senior, right? I'm a year ahead of you." After Ent politely greeted him, Fan An began his act of ignorance plan. Looking at the large wound on Ent, he asked if he had been attacked by a lizard. Hearing Ent explain that he had just encountered a crocker fan, An clicked his tongue, sympathizing with the poor guy for running into such a rare beast. He immediately took out a glowing potion and tossed it straight at Ent, claiming it was the highest grade restorative potion. "Drinking this is better than 10 regular ones combined." He thought to himself, "Drink up, you owe me a favor. Don't make me become a beggar later on." Looking at the precious potion, Ent panicked and refused, saying he had no money to pay for such an expensive item from the wealthy young master. But Fan An just smiled meaningfully and declared, "I don't need money." He added sweet words, claiming he didn't believe someone with royal blood could be such a loser. With a calculating look, Fan An concluded, "Think of this as an investment." This unexpected generosity touched Ent deeply, who secretly thought, "Senior Fan An isn't at all like the rumors about him being greedy. He's actually a really kind person." Ent bowed and thanked him profusely, while Fan An, though smiling on the outside, was dying on the inside at having to waste an expensive potion on this damn prophecy. He didn't forget to put on airs, warning that Ent was extremely lucky he was being merciful and overlooking his trespassing, something others would never get. After telling Ent to be careful and saying goodbye, Fan An pretended to leave, but actually hid nearby to mask his presence. "Look at how pathetic he looks, just like a common thief." Watching Ent down the potion and enter the dungeon, Fan An could only lament the loss of his item before silently following him into the deep, dark passage. "Unbelievable, this really is a dungeon," Fan An exclaimed when, stepping inside, he noticed there was no resistance, proving Ent had already cleaned everything out on his way. Looking at the magic lamps glowing around Fan An wondered why their mana was so weak, but quickly realized they were absorbing mana from the environment to operate semi-permanently. He clicked his tongue in regret. He left something so valuable behind. He really doesn't understand the value of money. These business types really see everything as cash. How impressive. Looking at Ent's naive expression earlier, Fan An couldn't help but suspect whether the future of the world really lay in the hands of someone like that. According to the prophecy, Ent was supposed to have entered this dungeon in a state of severe injury after a fall at the entrance. He would have had to grit his teeth, enduring the bone-chilling pain spreading through his body, and drink the last drops of the restorative potion. But because the potion's quality was so bad, the wounds wouldn't have healed at all. At the altar, a long, simple sword with faint patterns appeared. The moment he saw it, Ent's heart and soul thrashed violently due to a strange connection. Ent reached out to grab the hilt, and immediately a blinding aura burst forth, dispelling completely the silence of the darkness in the cave. When the light vanished and Ent opened his eyes, he realized he was no longer in the dungeon, but had been teleported to a secluded alley at the Royal Academy. Only then did Fan An walk up to the empty altar, where traces of magic still lingered, though they were fading. Looking at the marks where the sword had once been plunged, he confirmed that Ent had completely vanished after obtaining the treasure. He had evaporated from the scene, leaving him standing there like a statue. All of this was like a slap in the face, confirming to Fan An that the prophecy was 100% real. He shuddered, imagining a dark scenario, a cruel decree of exile issued personally by the head of the Philipsburg family, stripping him of all rights and forbidding him from taking anything related to the family. In that memory, Ent appeared with the arrogance of a savior looking down on Fan An, who was in a miserable state, and said, "That is the final favor I can grant you." Thinking about the prospect of becoming a tattered beggar, Fan An flew into a rage, clutching his hair. What kind of miserable future is this? He didn't know that Entamion was the one acknowledged by the prophecy book as the protagonist, a hero with the mission to protect the world from the devil. But ironically, he was also the one who would cause Fan An's downfall. Even so, through the eyes of a money-obsessed person, Fan An still considered Ent a rising stock, a perfect investment opportunity that needed to be bought while the price was still low. What money can't buy can be bought with a lot of money. Fan An told himself. He should immediately rush over and wag his tail, fawning like a loyal dog, but Ent's personality was the complete opposite of his. Ent was the type of person who valued honor more than material things. If Fan An approached too recklessly with money, he would likely be seen as shameless and invite hatred. During this dilemma, Fan An sought the opinion of Hai. Imagine there's a trading firm that's sure to be profitable, but its work style is the opposite of yours. Would you invest? Hai didn't hesitate to reply, "I would invest without a second thought." Hai added a remark that made Fan An freeze. "Didn't you used to say that money suits every style, Ao?" Young master. That sentence helped Fan An wake up. He realized that even if the world were to end, the core of everything was still high-risk investment to reap massive profits, and personality differences became meaningless in the face of huge benefits. Because the greatest commonality of all people is making money, right? Fan An decided he had to find out more specific information about Ent immediately. Ignoring Hai's frantic reminders about an upcoming guest, Fan An resolutely left. At the Amion Academy, dormitories were strictly divided by top 10 rankings. While those in the luxurious Revidios Hall were ranked from 11 to 30, everyone else in Brest Hall was shoved into the dilapidated D Best Hall. Gakner Unfan Fanzon, the soul residing within End Sword, was absolutely fuming. Enraged to see a descendant of the royal family forced into such a miserable room, he shrieked, unable to believe this harsh reality. Meanwhile, N just sat in silence, reading a book in the middle of the dilapidated room. Well, that's just how it is, N thought. I'm used to being poor. You won't be able to handle it if you get used to being comfortable, the old man bellowed, screaming that if the late emperor were still alive, he would surely burst out of his coffin to strangle these people like demons. End just smiled helplessly. When asked why he was dragging demons into this, the old man grew even more furious, insisting that if not for those demons, meddling things wouldn't be this bad. End sighed and admitted that the reason he was placed in this run-down dormitory was because he was weak. Unfan Fanzon couldn't help but gasp. A descendant of the Amirn house, and yet this weak, unbelievable, End calmly sat on his bed and remarked that the biggest fault actually lay with the first emperor. To the surprise of his guardian spirit, he explained that it was he who abolished the hereditary succession system, shifting the empire to a system where the emperor was elected by 7 different electoral houses. Not only that emperor also donated most of the Amirn family's lands and assets to the empire. About a century ago, the imperial throne officially fell into the hands of other electoral families. leading to the point where all the land now no longer belongs to the Amirn house. With no hereditary system left, other clans pushed them into the dirt. The family declined, to the point where even the supreme sword technique manuals had long been lost. End bitterly thought that despite having the title of Elector, he hadn't even learned basic swordsmanship properly. Unfan Fanzon, though prone to scolding, had to acknowledge N's innate talent and promised to support him with all his might to restore his past glory. The old man secretly wondered if the late emperor had foreseen this and left him behind to help the boy. Just as they were talking, a loud, urgent knocking echoed at the door, startling both of them. "Endamion, are you in there?" a voice called from behind the door. Unfan Fanzon curiously asked if someone was looking for him, but End was also bewildered, because he didn't know anyone here. When End asked for the caller's identity, the person simply replied, "Your senior." A strange feeling flashed through End, and he hurriedly opened the door, stunned to see Fan, and standing there with a mysterious smile. He asked nervously, "Fan, and why are you here?" Fan An replied with his usual nonchalance, asking if he was busy, and then suggested borrowing a bit of his time because he had something to discuss. Looking around the crowded hallway, Fan An remarked that it was too public and demanded to find a quieter place. End nervously asked his senior to wait 10 minutes so he could prepare, but was immediately mocked by Fan An in the tone of a superior. "You're making a senior wait 10 minutes. Back in my day, if a senior called, even if I were sleeping, I'd run out in my underwear. You freshmen are so weak." Terrified End quickly corrected himself, saying he would be ready in just 5 minutes. Fan An acted magnanimously, forgiving him, then walked out to wait in front of the dormitory. Unfan Fanzon couldn't help but fume when he learned the person putting on airs was from the Perlenberg family. The old man insulted them, calling them nouveau riche, who dared to order a royal descendant around. Meanwhile, End worriedly wondered if his senior had come to collect the money for the recovery potion from earlier. Sitting across from each other in the luxurious room, Fan An's eyes immediately locked onto the weapon beside End and asked, "You carry a sword?" End awkwardly explained that he just felt at ease holding his sword and meant no disrespect. Fan An nodded slightly, seemingly understanding, as most knights never leave their weapons behind. However, deep down Fan and secretly confirmed that this was the sword containing the soul of Gakner Unfan Fanzon. Fan An nonchalantly stated that his reason for coming wasn't a big deal. He just wanted to have a meal with Endamion. To the boy's surprise, Fan An generously told him to pick whatever he wanted. End looked around the extravagant space and hesitantly refused, fearing the cost, but was immediately suppressed by Fan An's authority as a senior, forcing him to take the menu. Watching End's naive face as he carefully examined the menu, Fan An secretly observed and evaluated, the other party thinking he looked truly innocent and simple. "He's never been out for such a fancy meal, has he? Poverty is truly miserable, huh?" To start the conversation, he asked about End's goals after graduating from the academy. Fan An analyzed that, while others came here to build connections, the Amirn family was in dire need of complete reconstruction. Mentioning his family, End's gaze changed completely. He bitterly admitted he was sick of being looked down upon for being from a fallen royal lineage. With eyes burning with determination, End declared he would become a royal knight, to restore his family's honor. Witnessing that sudden shift in attitude, Fan An realized End possessed extremely strong will and ambition, not soft, as he appeared on the surface. Fan An ended the meeting, telling himself he now had a rough idea of Endamion's personality. Fan An felt lucky he hadn't rushed to offer a sponsorship contract too early. He began analyzing N's stock metrics from his appearance and potential to his intellect. Based on the analysis of N's personality, Fan N concluded, this was a super blue-chip asset with immense pride, but was currently undervalued, perfect for long-term investment. He knew that if he suddenly threw money at N, now it would only make him feel insulted. Therefore, he needed a slow and steady strategy, quietly infiltrate and build trust bit by bit. Fan An wore a smile, full of calculation. He told himself that there would come a day when N would need him. When that moment came, he just had to reel him in. In his mind, he envisioned catching the big fish in Damien, turning him into an ally, and squeezing every last drop of value out of him. Just as he stepped into the mansion, Hai was waiting and asked, "Young master, you're back. Where have you been?" Fan An nonchalantly replied that he had just met an acquaintance. When Hai asked if it was someone from the Bertrep family, Fan An was briefly surprised. Bertrep, why mention him all of a sudden? Hai explained that Luina Bertrep had come today to talk about that debt. Hearing this, Fan An froze slightly. Wait, it's today. The butler continued saying if he had known the master would be late, he would have told her to leave, as Luina had waited for 3 hours before finally leaving. Oh no, how could you let a beautiful lady wait that long? Hai surmised that Bertrep probably thought he was dodging him to apply pressure. Hearing this, Fan An smirked in satisfaction. Even better. I already went to the trouble of tying him down. Now I just need to tighten the noose. But just as he finished, a violent headache struck, making Fan An cry out in pain to the worry of. The two of them just waved it off, saying it was nothing, but deep down, he was shaken, realizing he had uncovered a piece of a prophecy he previously couldn't read. It was right there, crystal clear lines describing a girl with hair like brown clouds and sapphire blue eyes. The prophecy said her swordsmanship was incredibly precious, beautiful, more vivid and alive than anything else, so much so that Ent was completely mesmerized by her sword dance under the moonlight. She was talented enough to become a royal knight, but deep in her heart lay a dark, melancholic shadow. The next line made Fernand's skin crawl. If the chains binding her are broken, she will spread her wings, fly high into the sky, and be free. He was stunned when, reading the rest of Ent's memory, a terrifying truth emerged. Fernand realized his own family was the one holding her down. This girl and that might be exactly why Ent loathed him to his very bones. Fernand gritted his teeth and cursed. Damn it, that guy. Is he really going to end up a beggar just because of a girl? Seriously, is the truth really that hard to swallow? Meanwhile, the two of them were still flustered, trying to explain that they didn't mean any harm toward their master. At this moment, Rena was sitting alone in a luxurious reception room. She couldn't hide her irritation after Fernand stood her up yesterday, only to be called here so suddenly today. A bitter, desperate feeling surged within her, wondering if he was planning to snuff out the last hope of someone drowning in debt like her. Standing behind the observation glass, Fernand could feel the frustration radiating from behind her back quite clearly. He knew full well that her house, the Berchamp family, were prestigious border counts, those who held the heavy responsibility of guarding the borderlands for generations. They used to be one of the 7 electors, the sturdy pillars protecting the north of the empire. However, a massive monster disaster had ravaged everything, causing their fortified castle to collapse and their former glory to vanish in fire and smoke. To restore the Berchamp family, they had to engage in frantic financial maneuvers, even selling their golden edict, the symbol of the highest power of an elector, but it barely made a dent. In their moment of deepest despair, the only one who offered a helping hand was Fernand's father, the head of the Fulenberg family. The sins of the father are visited upon the son, But that's not it. If the son is thirsty, he'll have to go begging. But no, there was no way he acted out of simple compassion. The Fallenberg family possessed excellent magic, but lacked a perfect sword manual to create ideal magic warriors. The disaster that befell the Beauchamp house was a godsend for him to carry out his dark ambitions. His father had secretly blocked other nobles from helping, driving the Beauchamps into a corner, to force them into taking on a massive debt. Now, though the Beauchamps avoided total annihilation, they had to break their backs paying off heavy interest every year. Fernand secretly thought that if he just pressed them a little harder, they would certainly have to hand over their precious sword manual. Ironically, this girl who was currently in debt, Rena Beauchamp, was actually Entamien's destined lover in the prophecy. The talented heir Destiny Love, did that guy Ent get it all? Fernand asked himself, filled with envy. He told himself that regardless of what manual Rena possessed, at the very least, right now, he had to make her stop hating him to avoid a tragic outcome. Walking into the room, Fernand spoke up. "Rena Beauchamp, you're early." He sat down calmly and started to apologize for yesterday, using the excuse that he was distracted and forgot the appointment, not that he did it on purpose. Rena just looked at him with a cold gaze and replied bitterly, "Enough. It's always the weak who get the short end of the stick." Ugh, the beauty is angry. How do I coax her now? Fernand tried to explain that he didn't mean to be late, but Rena just coldly brushed it off. While Fernand was racking his brain on how to win over the beauty, Operation Woo Rena Beauchamp Phase 1 officially began. He just started talking about the magic and swordsmanship departments having joint classes next year and immediately got hit with a cold shoulder. "I refuse," she said, even though Fernand snapped because he hadn't finished his sentence. Rena already saw through him, asking bluntly if he intended to invite her as his study partner. Fernand hadn't even replied yet, and Rena twisted the knife deeper by claiming that she was ranked second in the department, while he was lagging far behind at 100th, so she could definitely choose someone better. Not wanting to lose, Fernand immediately played his trump card. "If you agree to be my partner for 3 years, I will wipe out all your loan interest." Rena was stunned. Her blue eyes widened in shock, unable to believe her ears. Fernand continued to add conditions. She had to accept him as her patron. Despite Rena's skepticism, he used the joint class excuse as being very important because it accounted for 5 whole credits. But she knew better. That wasn't the real reason. Rena mentioned that she was on a scholarship, so a patron was unnecessary. Rich kids. Is hitting on girls really? This difficult, Rena bitterly revealed that she sent almost all of that money to her family. Other than staying in the dorms, her life was worse than even a commoner's. Fernand saw through that misery and asserted that he didn't mean anything else. He just wanted to invest because he saw her talent. Although Rena was still wary, since nobles usually don't patronize each other, Fernand secretly judged that she was also a person who valued honor just like him. He knew clearly that even though they were both nobles, the current status of the Beauchamp family couldn't be put on the same scale as the wealth of his family. Rena angrily asked if he was insulting her, but Fernand knew this wasn't the time for her to keep up her useless pride. He told himself that no matter how much she hated his family, she had to consider this lucrative offer. The campaign moved to Phase 2. Fernand started using psychological tactics when mentioning that he had watched her sword dance recently. Looking straight at Rena, he asserted that her sword style was incredibly noble, vivid, and carried a distinct noble aura. Fernand was sure that she wouldn't be able to refuse someone who truly understood and acknowledged her talent. "I've already lowered myself, given you a way out. Just climb down already." Suddenly, Fernand stood up abruptly and started his cringeworthy performance. I still haven't been able to forget the first day I saw your sword dance. He rambled, reciting a poem of praise. That was so cringy, it made your skin crawl. Her sword dance is so beautiful, elegant, dignified, and righteous. It tears through the wind faster than light, yet it is as gentle as a butterfly passing through the night sky. That image, Mao, haunts me, constantly robbing me of my sleep. Rina was so embarrassed that her face turned every color. She screamed in despair, "Enough! It's so embarrassing, stop it." But Fernan wouldn't stop. He continued to yell passionately, "No, I can't!" Stop, I still haven't found the words. Ain't perfect enough to describe the beauty of your sword dance, unable to endure this verbal torture any longer. Rina had to close her eyes and scream, "Fine, I agree to be your partner." Fernand's campaign to charm Rina Burchamp was officially a complete success. Right after, Rina squeezed her eyes shut and shouted, "Fine, I give in, I'll be your companion." Fernand's mission to win over Rina Burchett was officially a complete success. Back in her private chambers, Rina is reviewing the contract terms with her trusted nanny. 3 years of debt interest wiped out secret protection and a partnership agreement, ending the moment she graduates. In exchange, she just has to be friends with that money-obsessed lunatic for 3 years. Rina wears a smug smile thinking about this sweet deal. The terms are too good. I can't say no to this. Who turns down money? Not me, that's for sure. Rina tells her nanny how Fernand saw potential in her swordsmanship. He called it elegant, beautiful, and vibrant, even using flowery language, claiming he couldn't find the perfect words to describe it. Hearing this, the nanny immediately flares up, gritting her teeth. She assumes that money grubber is definitely plotting something devious. She crumples the contract in her hands, warning Rina to be careful with his words, because he's a Philipsburg heir. She insists firmly that because he's an heir, he's using seduction tactics to reel her in. With his sharp features, deep eyes, and that captivating smile, he's trying to woo her. Rina just stares at her nanny, speechless. She insists. She isn't being seduced, but admits the whole thing is suspicious. Still, for the sake of the interest waiver for her family, she decides she'll try to endure it. The nanny is still full of questions, especially since Rina is ranked 2nd in the school, while Fernand is only ranked 100th. Just then, a knock at the door cuts their conversation short. The butler appears and delivers an order. Young Master Fernand wishes to see Lady Rina. He says he'll be waiting at the training grounds. Have her come at once. His arrogant attitude demanding she come immediately makes the nanny incredibly annoyed, while Rina just asks in confusion, the training grounds to chat. Why pick such a weird spot? Even though she accepted the deal, Rina can't help but wonder why he called her to the training grounds. What is he planning to do there? I really don't understand what he's up to. Meanwhile, Fernand is sauntering in staff in hand. Even though Rina has held the 2nd place spot, she has never once defeated Elon Donas, the top student of the 2nd-year sword department. However, in Fernand's eyes, she possesses the potential to become one of the 10 strongest royal knights on the continent. He thinks to himself, we'll soon find out if she's truly a rough gem, or not. Seeing Fernand, Rina walks up and asks bluntly, I don't understand what you're trying to do. What do you mean by this? Fernand replies calmly, I just don't want you to think that being my friend and partner is useless. I want to prove that I'm not inferior to you. Hearing this, Rina raises an eyebrow. So, you want to spar with me right here? She adds that even though he's only ranked 100th, the fact that he was chosen for the Labadus Hall is enough to prove his skill. But Fernand just smirks. Still, there's a huge gap between 2nd and 100th. I get it. Let's begin. Rina doesn't hesitate. She draws her sword from its sheath and declares, Fine. If you really want to prove it, then go ahead. Fernan arrogantly claims he'll let her take the first strike. Rina retorts with a sarcastic tone, "How generous." Rina suddenly freezes as a wave of intense deadly red magical pressure erupts from Fernan. The match intensifies quickly. Every spell he fires carries destructive power, knocking back every attempt Rina makes to close the distance. Debris from the ground flies everywhere under the suffocating pressure of his mana. Rina is shocked to realize his power far exceeds her imagination. He just shattered the training ground floor. That's unexpected. No wonder he wanted a spar. He actually has some real talent. Ha! Looking at the devastated scene, Rina can't help but shudder in fear. The training ground is reinforced with all sorts of defensive magic. Even normal spells shouldn't leave a scratch. Yet, the ground under Fernan is now pulverized into pieces from the force of complex, constantly shifting magic circles. Rina stands stunned, cold sweat dripping down her forehead as she stares at her new partner. Fernan Fallenberg. Could it be? A horrifying truth hits her mind. He has been hiding his true strength all this time. Standing at the center of a massive energy surge, Fernan looks down at her with glowing red eyes and a mysterious smile, while the staff in his hand emits a light that overwhelms everything around them. Seeing this power, she realizes Fernan can instacast and chaincast high-level spells. Like a madman, it seems impossible for a student. The massive amount of mana radiating off him makes her wonder just how much mana does he have. This definitely cannot be the power of a rank 100 student. In that desperate moment, Rina bitterly admits she completely underestimated her opponent. "Oh, I'm done for. Be careful, don't lose now, or you'll lose face. You won't even be able to look him in the eye." Feeling defeat approaching if she keeps playing defense, Rina tells herself, "If I keep going like this, I'm going to lose." She decides to give it her all. Seeing her fierce resistance, Fernan is slightly surprised then, suddenly breaks into a wicked grin. A massive explosion rocks the entire training ground, causing sturdy stone walls to crumble and collapse under the suffocating pressure. Amidst the debris and thick dust, Rina swings her sword, which glows with a brilliant blue light, and lunges forward like an arrow, piercing the wind, ignoring the massive rocks flying everywhere. Her speed is so fast, it creates streaks of blinding light cutting through every obstacle to deliver the final blow and end this intense battle. Rina's cold blade stops right at Fernan's throat in the nick of time, forcing him to stand frozen. Fernan raises his hands calmly and declares, "I concede." Facing Rina's angry expression, asking if he was mocking her, Fernan explains calmly, "I'm not mocking you. I just ran out of mana. A mage without mana can't beat a knight." Observing him closely, Rina sees that Fernan is truly exhausted and doesn't look like he's acting. She tells herself that since she blocked every attack until he had no resistance left, this victory is completely hers. Don't you dare think he let me win just because I'm a girl. Even though she won, an indescribable sense of unease lingers in Rina's heart. She thinks, this victory doesn't feel like a real victory. Just then, Fernan casually takes out a gift box and hands it to her. "Oh, and this. I wanted to give this to you. Take it as a gift because you won. I heard you like chocolate, right? This is whiskey-infused chocolate made by my family. It's delicious." Seeing a treat she actually likes, Rina can't help but swallow her saliva, cheering excitedly in her head. Fernan continues to ramble on and on, listing a series of rare chocolates from Kraken Ink to Tree of Life bark, insisting that as long as she likes them, he has it all. Suddenly, Rina freezes. She looks at him suspiciously. "Wait a second. Did you investigate my background?" Fernan replies nonchalantly, with a sarcastic tone, wiping his mouth before saying, "Yeah, I wouldn't go through the effort for just anyone you know. Nope, I was just briefly looking into info on all the top-ranking students. Ugh, he doesn't even respect her, and he could even tell she was a glutton. Oh my God, so embarrassing, she thought, cringing at Fernand's clumsy excuses. Rena snapped, furious. You call that not investigating? She huffed, feeling insulted. She wasn't a child to be bribed with candy just for winning a match. But just as Fernand moved to take the gift back, she snatched it away, declaring, "Did I say I wasn't accepting it?" Fernand broke into a triumphant grin. Well then, I hope we can get along from now on. However, Rena still had questions about his true ability. She challenged him. Wait, for what reason you possess a massive amount of mana enough to unleash powerful spells one after another on your own. I can't even guess what your limit is. With power like that, why are you only ranked 10th? Fernand just smirked mysteriously and dropped a chilling line. Isn't it obvious? A merchant shouldn't stand under the spotlight. That night at the mansion, Hai was horrified at the wreckage of the amplifiers and mana storage units on the table. What happened here? What did you do? To completely destroy all of this. Fernand calmly replied that he had just sparred with Rena and that she was truly powerful. He sighed. I was so well prepared. And I still got wrecked. Not only that, she drained all my mana and was still standing tall. Is he not stingy anymore? That money grubber. Hai thought, unable to hide his distress. He asked why his master would use such precious items just to spar with Rena. Is she really worth that much? Fernand leaned back in his chair, unbothered. Consider it an investment for the future. Seeing his young master's strange behavior, Hai wondered. Could the side effects from that lightning strike be acting up again? Meanwhile, Fernand was lost in his own calculations. He admitted that Entamian's judgment wasn't wrong at all. Rena Bergev's swordsmanship was fast, fluid, and possessed a noble, otherworldly grace. Gazing at the image of that powerful girl, Fernand finally understood why his father was so crazily obsessed with seizing the Bergev family's secret sword techniques. Fernand pensively admitted that Rena was truly a genius with raw talent. Standing nearby, Hai still couldn't understand his master's intentions. He wondered why. With that kind of talent, she had never taken first place. Was it because her equipment was inferior to others? Hai asked anxiously, My lord, how do you intend to report this to the Duke? The Bergev family secret manual was something the Duke had been craving for years. Just tell him to stop being so greedy and be a decent human being. Fernand thought, starting to feel nervous. He wondered if his father would disown him over this. Hai poured cold water on him. Disown you? No, he'll kill you instead. Seeing the young master panic and try to defend himself as a legitimate son, the butler added that the paperwork for disowning someone was complicated, but the Duke certainly wouldn't kill his own son just for ruining a plan. Still, Fernand decided to write a letter to his father beforehand and wait for the reply, even though he had already imagined the old man being so shocked that he'd kill the disappointing brat himself. Even his soul wouldn't be spared, just snatched up and squeezed by the neck. The anxiety clung to Fernand, refusing to let go. He buried himself in books looking for information on the demons, but his mind wouldn't stop, worrying about his father's ruthlessness. A few days later, the reply finally arrived faster than he expected. Seeing Hai's tear-streaked face, Fernand asked if his father had left any specific instructions. The only response was a shake of the head, and the butler's face drenched in tears, which made Fernand suspicious. Then, why do you look like that? Hai sobbed, saying he had a feeling today would be his last day serving the young master, forcing Fernand to snap at him to shut up. He confidently asserted that he wouldn't be disowned over the Bergev business, because according to the prophecy, the crime that would get him kicked out of the house was colluding with demons caused by Entamion. But just as he opened Yvonne's letter, Fernand froze as he saw the short sentence, "You've been possessed by a demon." Fernand's face went pale. He trembled and told Hai they had to see his father immediately, while Hai remained clueless. Not understanding what was happening, Fernand realized in shock that he was being dragged into the demon trouble in a way he never expected. He understood that he couldn't reveal the prophecy book in his head because it didn't have a physical form, and no one would believe something that only existed in his mind. If he told the truth, people would just think he was a delusional merchant who had lost his mind. "Please come with me, my lord is waiting." The guide's voice cut through his thoughts. Fernand walked silently after the old butler, preparing to face his powerful father. "Well, come, what may. Let's see how this goes." Having stepped into the room with the fear that his father would fly into a rage, thinking he had tarnished the family name, Fernand told himself he needed to offer something big enough to make up for the loss regarding the Bergef matter. Seeing his son walk in, Mr. Ivan Farlenberg was still calmly sitting at his desk, dropping a sarcastic remark. "You look calmer than I thought. It makes me think you took some medicine and went crazy, or maybe the demon the first emperor destroyed has been resurrected and possessed my son." His eyes were sharp, staring straight at Fernand. He demanded, "If that's not it, then explain why you did what you did." Fernand stood tall and declared firmly, "I've decided to invest in the Bergef family in a different way." Immediately, his father questioned him in a skeptical tone. "How can that be better than their family's secret sword techniques?" When Fernand replied that he couldn't disclose it, Mr. Ivan started losing his patience, asserting that his actions were irrational and that he was trying to squander the family's assets. Despite the opposition, Fernand remained steadfast. "Even so, my intention hasn't changed. If you give me full authority to handle the Bergef affair, I believe I can bring back benefits even greater than that manual." Ugh, he's just going to argue, he thought. "What is the basis for that confidence?" Mr. Evans squinted and asked back. In the face of his son's silence, he snapped, saying he didn't raise him to be a reckless person, and this wasn't a matter that could be solved with a childish tantrum. Realizing the situation was tense, Fernand told himself it was time to use the information from the prophecy to bargain. He calmly suggested, "I'm not throwing a tantrum. In exchange for taking full responsibility for the Bergef affair, I will provide you with information that only I know." He added that he possessed his own privately run intelligence network to add weight to his words, even though he was still skeptical that his son's network could be better than the family's. Mr. Ivan still ordered him to continue. Fernand didn't hesitate to reveal a earth-shattering secret. To the west of the Arut mountain range in Viscount Doness's territory, there is an undiscovered magic crystal mine. This information, without waiting for him to continue, Fernand dropped a bombshell. Hidden in the west of the Arut mountains, within Viscount Doness's territory, there's an undiscovered magic crystal mine. It truly stunned his father, as no one had ever heard of any mines there. In that region, he loudly ridiculed it as nothing more than child's play by a bunch of amateur intelligence agents, but Fernand calmly retorted that children naturally love to dig in the dirt. When kids play, they sometimes accidentally dig up a buried coin. Makes sense, right? Children don't know how to lie, heh. Flashing a confident smile under the brilliant sun, Fernand insisted. The location at Mount Arut contains a massive deposit enough to cover all the losses from the Bergef incident and still have plenty left over. He sealed his claim with a firm, absolute statement. As for the value of the information he just provided, it's an entire treasure trove of magic stones, a precious mineral packed with immense magical power, and obviously, that means a whole lot of money. Fernand knew the stone mine in the Arut range was only briefly mentioned in the prophecy. He had never seen it with his own eyes, so he didn't know the scale. But at least, this information was enough to buy him some time before his father's wrath. He calculated that the shipment handled by the Donis house had just been sunk, leaving them financially drained. This was a golden opportunity he could skillfully exploit to seize the rights to mine those stones. He told himself to delay revealing the prophecy for as long as possible to avoid being found out. Lord Ivan pondered and admitted that if what his son said was true, it would be enough to cover the losses, but he still needed to verify it. He ordered Fernand to return to the academy and study properly. Once there was concrete proof, he would call him back. Fernand let out a sigh of relief as he stepped out of the room, thinking to himself that he'd just lost 10 years of his life due to the old man's terrifying pressure. But just as he turned to leave, his father's voice calling. Fernand's name made him jump, sweat pouring down his face, fearing he'd messed something up again. "You're not off the hook yet, my son." "Great, there goes more of my lifespan." Seeing how tense his son was, Lord Ivan suddenly changed his tone and invited him to have a meal, since he couldn't just kick him out immediately. After Fernand left, he began discussing with the butler about Golden Column, the intelligence organization under his son's management. Fernand understood the value of minerals for profit very well. That was why, even though he had a talent for fire magic, he firmly chose to become an earth mage to serve his business interests. Even though the information still needed verification, the butler believed the young master truly possessed a powerful intelligence organization. Lord even smiled triumphantly, realizing that the organization was so powerful it had even secured a mineral vein. Who would have thought the kid who was obsessed with minerals since he was little would actually pull off something this big? However, he didn't forget to order a thorough investigation into Rina Burjap to see what she had done to seduce his son Fernand. When the butler asked whether the young master had fallen for Rina, Lord Ivan just casually told him to clean up, then hammered home a hard-learned business principle. No profit, no investment. But if there's a profit, you must put the money down. He believed that if an investment was made for no clear reason, it meant that person's eye had been caught by something else. Lord Ivan smiled cryptically, wondering if it wasn't young love. What else could have caused Fernand to change so much? He had a feeling there was more to the story. He wondered to himself what his son, who cared about money more than his own life, was plotting. Meanwhile, at the academy, Rina was enjoying a dessert and asked about Alia Tuktagar pairing up with Carlos Daner. She revealed that Carlos had chosen Alia right after she announced she would be in the same class as Fernand. Hearing that Fernand asked if Alia was the one, ranked 4th in the night department, and Rina confirmed that she used to be 5th, but had since made remarkable progress. Fernand pressed her, asking if Rina had told Carlos about pairing up with him. She casually replied that the rumors had already spread, so it couldn't be hidden, and sooner or later, everyone would know. Rina added bitterly that everyone kept saying she only paired up with him for the money. Fernand just smiled faintly, saying that was something everyone would guess, and he had to learn to face it. Seeing Rina agree, it wasn't entirely wrong, Fernand admitted. "Well, I really do like money. There's nothing I wouldn't do for it." Looking at his smug face, Rina was left speechless, thinking to herself, "No wonder everyone calls him a money-crazed freak. I'm crazy about money too. The more the better." Even though they were cooperating on the surface, Rina couldn't hide her disgust for Fernand's personality. Suddenly, Fernand pushed a luxurious box toward her and said, "Here, take this." Rina asked blankly what it was, only to be told it was a potion and an item exchange voucher. He explained the potion was brewed from rare mandrake roots, and the voucher could be used at the weapon shop managed by his company to get high-end equipment. Rina panicked and tried to refuse because the gift was too much, but Fernand immediately cut her off. "Don't forget the contract we signed." "Ah, the sponsorship contract. Rena was still stunned. She thought these items from the Pellenberg family's Golden Turtle Trading Company exceeded normal gift limits and asked him if he thought he was being excessive. Seeing her reaction, Fernan admitted that it was indeed excessive, but deep down his mind was calculating differently. He told himself that if this was the price to win over Rena and avoid the prospect of becoming a beggar in the future, it was still cheap. Not to mention, if she was strong enough to help him fight the demons, it would be even more worth it. Seeing Rena still determined to refuse, because it was too much, Fernan played his trump card. Refusing the sponsorship is a breach of contract. That's reason enough to cancel the contract. The penalty fee would be... Cornered by his devious psychological warfare, Rena could only grind her teeth and accept, "Fine, I'll take it. I'm already rumored to be paired with a rich guy anyway, so a little more reputation won't hurt. See you in class." Fernan stood up and left, leaving Rena still bewildered with her half-finished drink. Watching his retreating back, she couldn't help but break into a cold sweat because of the pressure of this expensive contract. Rena started to feel flustered. She racked her brain trying to remember if the agreement had any hidden penalty clauses. She suspected Fernan was deliberately using these precious items to seduce her in order to steal her swordsmanship secrets, just as her nanny had warned. Rena inwardly resolved, just try it, but don't dream of ever succeeding. At the corner of the academy hallway, Fernan was resting his chin on his hand, observing the class below, and whispering to himself, searching for a glimpse of Entamyon. Ah, there he is. He smiled slightly when he spotted his target. It was the first lesson for the first-year night department with the theme of war and field combat, a course famous for evaluating students' abilities through friendly matches. According to the prophecy, ever since he possessed the sword, carrying the soul of Gakner Anfon Fashion End, had begun to shine brilliantly and became famous. The journey to become the hero who would save the world officially started from the powerful sword strikes right there. It's natural for the protagonist to have a halo, right? While engrossed in watching, Fernan suddenly noticed someone approaching him from behind. A blond man with a sleek appearance appeared, his voice dripping with sarcasm as he saw Fernan there. That person is Luster Swabane, the second prince of the current empire. Luster gives a faint smile and tells Fan, and not to be so formal, as this is the first time they've met since their second year. When asked if he has his eye on any new students, Fan An smirks and replies that he always keeps a close watch on those on the leaderboard. Luster's gaze turns sharp as he asks directly if Fan An is here because of Entamyon. Of course, since he's from the old royal family, Luster admits with a calculating smile. For 100 years, no one from House Amion had stepped foot into the academy, so Ent's arrival naturally draws curiosity. Luster Swabane belongs to the royal line that has held the throne for 3 generations since being elected emperor a century ago, despite sharing the same roots as House Amion. The relationship between the old royal family and the current one is becoming increasingly tense. To someone as power-hungry as Luster, the existence of Entamyon, who carries the more legitimate bloodline, is a significant threat. He's already in his crosshairs. He's probably looking for a way to finish him off. Luster narrows his eyes, casting a meaningful glance into the distance, before continuing. Though, I guess he's also very curious about Entamyon. Fanan's expression shifts slightly, wondering who it is, as he notices a new character appearing, a young man with bright red hair in a ponytail and cold, sharp blue eyes standing with his arms crossed arrogantly. Luster confirms, "Oh, is that Varen Canbunder? That's right, this time he got into the Night Academy as the runner-up." Luster continues to reveal the newcomer's ambition, stating that Canbunder is looking for a chance to replace the fallen Amion family and become one of the 7 imperial families. It is precisely because of that goal that he has been staring at Entamion non-stop. Fan An immediately grasps the situation. Varen Kanbunder. Huh. What a coincidence. The relationship between Luster and Varen probably starts right here. In every epic there is always a villain that the protagonist must overcome to grow. Fan An secretly confirms that Varen Kanbunder is the next rival he must face. Right now, on the training ground, a resounding voice urges, Antodinon, now it's your turn against Entamion. Both are present here. Fan An and Luster are witnessing the true hero's journey of Ent begin. Fan An wonders if this is all prearranged by fate. Seeing Ent standing tall on the training ground under the observation of both Varen and Luster, Fan An wears a mysterious smile, his eyes glowing as he wonders if this prophecy proves that he was completely right in deciding to invest in Ent. So let's begin. The lecturer's booming voice echoes, signaling the start of the battle. The match officially kicks off. Immediately, Anto-Denon lunges with sharp eyes and a decisive attack. Entamion can only widen his eyes, stunned by his opponent's incredible speed. Two blades clash, sending sparks flying and piercing sounds echoing throughout the training ground. He's in trouble now. I wonder if he'll pass this trial. The match quickly tilts to one side when Anto unleashes powerful strikes, knocking Ent far back. Not letting his opponent recover, Anto relentlessly closes in, forcing Ent into a completely passive position with lightning-fast movements. After a series of rapid-fire attacks, Ent has to retreat. Sweat drips down his face, revealing his exhaustion under the suffocating pressure. Observing from above, Luster Swabane comments that this class is randomly tiered, and he thinks that Entamion is truly unlucky to have run into an opponent out of his league. He analyzes that Anto-Denon ranked 10th in the entrance exam, while Ent is just stuck at the bottom in 38th place, making this an incredibly difficult match. Seeing Ent pushed to this extent, Luster wears a look of contempt, thinking the fight is boring, and intends to walk away thinking there is nothing left to watch. Just then, Fan An speaks up, stopping him. It's not that there's nothing to watch. Before Luster can understand what is happening, a brilliant aura suddenly erupts from Entamion. A colossal pillar of light shoots straight into the sky, radiating an overwhelming pressure that leaves Anto-Denon frozen in terror. With this newfound power, Ent swings his sword, unleashing a direct lightning strike with terrifying force. Anto stands stunned amidst the whispers and gossip of the crowd witnessing this scene. Luster is astonished, wondering if Anto intends to counterattack, while Varen Kanbunder cannot help but break a sweat, knowing he only ranked 38th. Luster remarks that perhaps Ent was caught off guard because the opponent attacked so fiercely from the start, and that his visible confusion shows he is still inexperienced. However, if he just regains his composure and fights back, the situation will immediately turn around. As Ent tightens his grip on the hilt, Anto grinds his teeth in frustration. A guy who only ranked 38th like you can make me lose. The surrounding students start whispering, believing that even though Ent did better than expected, Anto would surely win, and that holding out this long was already enough to save face for the royal family. Luster smirks with interest. Save face? He's ranked 38th, for crying out loud. Who would have thought someone ranked 38th would force someone, Altaus, ranked 10th in the academy, to use their energy? He admits that at least the boy is worthy of the Amion name. Keep insulting him. You never know who's better. Luster adds, a sarcastic compliment. A person with no talent trying this hard is also commendable. Hearing this, Fan An secretly refutes it in his head. No talent Entamion. Has no talent, no way. Fan An realizes it is not that Ent lacks ability, but that his living environment had never supported him. Deafening, clashing sounds continuously ring out as Ent unleashes powerful sword strikes, completely overwhelming his opponent to everyone's amazement. Fan An firmly asserts, Entamian is a special person, the one, Bizan, chosen by the prophecy. Ent's eyes glow with a powerful golden light, causing Anto to only stare in terror at the suffocating pressure. In Fan An's mind, Ent is the main character of this world. The match ends with Ent standing tall, sword in hand, looking down at the opponent who has completely collapsed at his feet, while Luster and Varin Kanbunder can only watch in silence with extremely annoyed expressions. Anto Dinan's sword flies out of his hand, spinning in the air, before thumping into the ground to the astonishment of all the students. Immediately, Professor Rush boomed, declaring the winner Entamian. The stands explode in resounding cheers. Ent raises his sword, with a face radiant with the joy of victory, while the crowd talks endlessly about how he defeated a 10th-ranked opponent like Anto. Watching from afar, Fan An wears a deeply satisfied smile, secretly confirming, just as predicted, the prophecy has become reality. I didn't choose the wrong person. In his eyes, Ent's value graph is skyrocketing in a straight line, and he seems to hear the sound of gold coins clinking into his pocket. Fan An tells himself that as long as he nurtures Ent well and turns him into a future ally, he will be secured. Meanwhile, Luster, standing next to him, is still in shock, stammering, unable to believe his eyes. Ent won. Ignoring the second prince's amazement, Fan An begins calculating the next step in his recruitment plan. Rena gotta calculate carefully, otherwise later on I'll only have a sack to go. Begging for alms. In the lecture hall, the appearance of the pair, Fan An and Rena, immediately becomes the focus of whispers and gossip. Other students cannot stop wondering, could they actually be a couple? And why would an elite lady like Rena agree to team up with a money-obsessed lunatic? Fernan feels annoyed by all the extra attention, but Rena remains cold. She tells him to ignore it, saying they'll get bored and stop sooner or later. To break the tense atmosphere, Fernan asks if she's used the potion and equipped her new gear yet. In silence, Rena recalls how excited she was to show off her new sword and how she felt a surge of energy after drinking the potion. Even though she's thrilled inside, Rena keeps up her haughty persona, coolly remarking, "Well, it's not bad." Just then, the rapid sound of high heels echoes through the hallway, grabbing every student's attention. Professor Rosalia from the Magic Department and Professor Rush from the Knights Department enter with an aura of absolute authority. She announces that from now on, the two departments will officially hold joint classes, not keeping the students waiting. Professor Grace orders the lesson to begin and asks if everyone has received the map from the teaching assistant. Yet, a giant magic circle glows bright beneath Professor Rosalia's hand, signaling that their first field practice has officially begun. UI complains about starting practice right away. Man, this teacher is so strict. Having her as a teacher is seriously high pressure. Professor Grace asserts that actual combat is the best way to verify knowledge and declares this will be a real test. A brutal field test. The destination and mission are already marked on the map, and the students must reach the target in exactly 4 hours. With a challenging smile, he emphasizes that arriving too early or too late is not allowed. Everyone must be present at exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Amidst the tense atmosphere of the class, a student raises their hand to ask if this test is graded. Professor Rosalia confirms this is the most important component after the official exams. When someone asks if they are allowed to fight each other, she smiles suggestively. If you manage to catch others, you'll be awarded bonus points. Without letting anyone react further, She decisively declares the start and activates the glowing magic circle, wishing the class luck. In a blink, Fernan and Rina are teleported to a desolate mountain forest. Fernan looks around bewildered, asking where they are. Rina calmly replies that they have to figure that out themselves. Just as she goes to open the map to get their bearings, they both notice someone secretly watching them from the bushes. Fernan quickly identifies them as Zenhaks and Netpalin, 2 students ranked outside the academy's top 70. He turns to ask Rina what she wants to do, not forgetting to throw in a sarcastic jab about whether it's worth bothering with such low-level trash. This makes the other 2 turn purple with rage. That'll teach them for spying. Right, Fernan thinks to himself, normally I'd just walk away, but this time, he decides to go along with whatever Rina wants. Seeing her nod triumphantly, he knows immediately that she's already eyeing the bonus points from those 2. Rina decisively draws her sword ready to hunt, but still reminds him to check the map first. Seeing Fernan suggest using magic to make it easier, she asks in surprise if there's any spell that can track their location, to which he gives a mood-killing answer, just climb to a high spot and look. This makes her quite annoyed. Realizing the situation is unstable, Zenhaks and Netpalin seize the moment while the 2 are arguing to try and run away. But Rina had already anticipated their move. She performs a skillful mid-air flip and lands to cut off the escape route of the 2 poor souls. "Where do you think you're going?" Rina yells, with eyes glowing with a menacing light, making Zenhaks and Netpalin scream in despair. A massive glowing blue sword wave suddenly crashes down from above, signaling the official start of the point hunt. Studying together and hunting together. I guess this little game of theirs is a bit cruel, huh? Turns out the maps the assistants handed out have defensive charms etched on them, helping Zenhaks and Netpalin keep their lives by a hair's breadth against Rina's blade. Seeing the pale purple light fade, Rina huffs, "If I'd known, I wouldn't have gone easy on you." Hearing this, the 2 guys lying sprawled on the ground can only tremble and scream in frustration. "That's what you call going easy. It's like you were trying to kill us." Back at the academy, student ID cards are shattering and vanishing one by one. Professor Grace concludes that another team has been eliminated. The pace of the culling is faster than he expected. Professor Rosalia smiles meaningfully as she realizes a strange truth: no one was defeated by monsters. Everyone was eliminated because of conflict between themselves. Rush is very curious and asks Rosalia which pair she is keeping a special eye on during this field trip. Based on the current scoreboard, the pair of Lucas Swabian and Alon Donis remains the strongest, followed by Carlos Daniel and Alia Tortega, who are also worth watching. Yet, Rosalia's gaze is fixed on the pair causing real chaos: Rina Burchat and Fernan Florenberg. Rush clicks his tongue, thinking Rina is the one losing out by teaming up with that guy, and he suspects she only agreed because of the money. However, he also notices a highly contradictory point: Fernan doesn't seem to care about his score at all. "Oh, and what did you think they chose each other for?" Rosalia asserts that Fernan definitely chose Rina for a reason other than points, because he is the type of student who could raise his rank whenever he wants, without needing to team up with anyone. To Rush's shock, she reveals a chilling fact: Fernan has always stayed at exactly rank 10, no more, no less. It's common for a top student to be ranked first, but staying exactly at rank 10 for such a long time is highly abnormal. His theoretical test scores are always nearly perfect, but he always intentionally takes deductions in the practical section to maintain that exact rank, just enough to stay in the luxurious Rabitus building. Rush is stunned to realize that Fernan has been intentionally hiding his true strength all this time under the guise of not wanting to stand out. Rosalia adds that this very couple is the culprit behind the destroyed training grounds. recently, which sent the professors scrambling to investigate. The thing that makes her most curious right now is not why he hid his skills, but why he has decided to stop hiding them now. Turning back to the forest, Fernan is standing on a towering rock pillar to get his bearings. He realizes the destination marker on the map is the northern coast, but the place where he is standing is the western mountain range. From below, the desperate screams of other students echo, "Save me, Rena Burchat. You're so cruel, I know. Scores are important, but this is just..." Fernan nonchalantly finishes his task and asks Rena if she's found the destination while she stands triumphantly in front of the defeated opponents she just finished off. Poor guys, their skills are just lacking. But, oh well. After dealing with the weak opponents, Rena checks the map and says decisively, "Now we just need to head northeast. We'll probably run into quite a few people along the way." Fernan nonchalantly replies, "Wonderful." But in his heart, he can't help but wonder if she's planning to find the next pair to hunt for. Points as well. Isn't she? Rena strokes her hair and confirms, "Yeah, there's still plenty of time. I think we should take advantage of it." "Still plenty of time," Rena said, smoothing her hair. "Yeah, I think we should make the most of it while we can." To rack up more bonus points, a provocative voice suddenly echoed, "Fan An Fan Lin." Stepping out was Carlos Denner, the guy teaming up with Aliyah Tothega. Having set an ambush from behind, Rena gritted her teeth. Carlos Denner calling a sneak attack from behind honorable. Carlos smirked arrogantly. "In battle, everything is fair game. Have you forgotten what the professor said? This is real combat." He began gathering brilliant blue electricity around his staff, roaring, "Did you think I'd let you just walk away after meeting me this early?" The lady casually scratched her head, then turned to ask Rena quietly, "Why is Carlos Denner so worked up? Did he beg you to be his partner?" "Right." He added a teasing remark that made her blood boil. "Probably hurt his ego because I snatched you away. You know he's a hothead, watch out, or you'll get an earful." Fan An silently evaluated this guy. How childish to hold a grudge over something already in the past. Rena looked visibly annoyed. "Snatched away, that's ridiculous. I don't belong to anyone." Caught in the center of his taunt, Carlos flushed bright red and shouted, "Shut up, stop talking nonsense, and let's fight." Realizing this battle was inevitable, Fanon told himself that taking down this high-ranking pair would yield massive bonus points. He turned to advise Rena, but because this was a high-ranking pair, "You can't just stand on the sidelines. I know I'll support you, so feel free to go all out." Even so, Rena looked at him with skepticism. "Support, don't push yourself too hard." She was worried because the two of them had no coordination at all. If they fought separately, teaming up would be pointless. Yet Fan An just flashed a mysterious smile to reassure her. "Don't worry." Immediately, he slammed his staff onto the ground, activating an incredibly powerful Earth attribute magic spell. Giant boulders erupted and floated around him. Amidst the fiery space and swirling rocks, Fan An stared straight at his opponents with fiery red, confident eyes. "Just trust me. Who says we need to have trained together to be in sync?" As the battle heated up in the monitoring room, Professor Rosalia whispered, "It looks like there's a major clash going on over there." Professor Grant looked at the magic screen and recognized the western mountain area, wondering, "Have the students started fighting monsters already?" Rosalia immediately denied it, as monsters don't appear in that sector. As she moved closer to observe, she realized the two high-ranking pairs she had just mentioned were already colliding. Witnessing this top-tier showdown, Professor Rush couldn't hide his excitement. "My goodness, two high-ranking student pairs clashing like this is truly worth waiting for." "Incredible," Carlos roared. "Fan and Fallenberg." This time, I'm going to see your true strength with my own eyes. A earth-shattering magical explosion erupted. Fan, An, and Rina coordinated smoothly, fiercely countering the relentless attacks from Carlos and Aaliyah. Debris and rocks flew everywhere under the suffocating pressure of elite swordplay and magic. In the heat of the fierce fight, Rina suddenly realized, "What is this? My body feels unusually light." She was stunned, wondering, "Is this a support spell? When did he cast it?" She looked over at Fan, An, who was calmly maintaining a magic circle at his feet while being besieged by flaming boulders. She couldn't help but be shocked. In the middle of a battle, he still had time to cast support spells. He'd been hiding his skills like a cat hides its mess. Seeing Rina staring at him, Fan An even took the chance to wink narcissistically. "I'm pretty cool, right?" Rina was speechless, silently scolding, "Is this guy insane? He really is." However, she quickly regained her composure, telling herself she couldn't lose focus, and decided to eliminate Aaliyah first. Rina lunged like a whirlwind, unleashing a powerful, direct slash at Aaliyah, creating a blinding magical explosion that shook the entire mountainside. But suddenly, Carlos swung his staff, unleashing brilliant blue lightning to surround her. The lightning chains wrapped tightly around her, leaving Rina shocked as she realized her body was completely paralyzed and she couldn't move. Even while being restrained, Rina refused to give up. She gritted her teeth, thinking that if she poured all her energy into her aura, she could break free. But Aaliyah didn't give her that chance. She leaped into midair, channeling all her firepower into her flaming sword, to deliver the finishing blow to end Rina right there. A heavy strike descended, creating a horrific explosion, but instead of Rina, what got hit was a giant boulder. Carlos froze in shock. A boulder. What? Meanwhile, Rina realized she had been moved to safety next to Fan An. Seeing her bewildered expression, Fan An smiled and explained, "Oh, it's a spell my family recently developed. I found it useful, so I learned it. It allows me to swap two objects of the same weight." Rina suddenly felt something was wrong. She glared and questioned, "How on earth do you know my weight?" Facing the fury of the lady Fan, An casually replied that he had only looked at her biological profile. The nonchalant answer made Rina so angry. She felt like exploding, while Fan An still calmly commented, "That rock, honestly, it wasn't even that heavy." Before it was smashed to dust under the magical pressure, Rina growled, threatening, "I'll ask about this later, and that profile, I'm going to burn it to ashes, Fan." And being grabbed by the collar and shaken violently, could only whine and plead, "Have mercy. You did this on purpose, right?" Rina wasn't over her anger yet. She frustratingly retorted, "I'll deal with Aaliyah, so you just focus on blocking Carlos." Fan An activated a glowing magic circle at his feet to prepare for the next step. Looking toward his opponent, Fan An wore a calculated smile. "That Carlos guy. I've been wondering why he hasn't used that move yet." He knew Carlos Denner's signature move was summoning a rain of lightning, creating a massive pillar of light from dozens of bolts at once. Thanks to multicasting, its destructive power far exceeded the student level, and that was exactly why Carlos stood at the top of the night department. Fan An pulled out two sparkling blue orbs and confidently declared, "Let's see, I've researched how to block this move now. I can test it. Let's see how effective it is." The sky suddenly changed color. Carlos poured all his energy into activating the grand spell, filling the space with deadly, brilliant blue lightning bolts. A massive lightning strike with earth-shattering power descended directly onto Fan An's position, swallowing his silhouette in the blinding light and deafening explosions. As the smoke and dust gradually dispersed, Fan An was still standing, tall, completely unharmed, with an arrogant smirk on his lips. Carlos was shocked, stuttering in disbelief. You blocked it. That's impossible. What kind of move was that? Surprised classmate Fan An calmly held up the two orbs. As the blinding light and deafening explosions faded, Fernan stood tall, completely unscathed, a cocky grin plastered on his face. Carlos was trembling, unable to believe his own eyes. You blocked it. That's impossible. What the? Surprised classmate Fernan calmly held up two spheres. The scene shifts to pitch black as he explains that this is a storage device capable of absorbing magical power. He approaches the losers, pats them on the shoulder, and triumphantly adds, "Of course, I made some minor adjustments. It was expensive and difficult to craft, but the efficiency is not bad at all. If I fine-tune it a bit more and successfully mass-produce it, this item could definitely be sold on the market. Haha, I smell money." Carlos is furious and screams, claiming that using magical artifacts in battle is cowardly and cheating. Fan An calmly replies, "What's cowardly about winning a fight?" The statement leaves Carlos speechless, able only to watch as his teammate Aaliyah falls into a desperate situation and curses, "Damn it, Fan!" and softly calls out, "Rena, finish it." Rena's eyes blaze with a powerful blue light. She channels all her strength into her sword to unleash a finishing move to end the match. Which team will the score favor? Well, everyone knows by now, right? From a distance, Luster Swabian and his companion are quietly observing the scene. The companion remarks that out of the 4 people, only 2 remain meaning. That one team has been eliminated and will be immediately teleported to the finish line by the teaching assistant. He believes no student can block Carlos's set, so the Fernan-Rena pair must have run into bad luck. However, Luster has a completely different view. He asserts that Fan An usually hates standing out and always hides his true strength, but since teaming up with someone as obsessed with grades as Rena, he can no longer hide his skills. Luster analyzes that if Fernan goes all out, his ranking will surely skyrocket. Within the power struggles of the royal family, Luster knows clearly that if he lets himself slip even a little, he will be crushed by others immediately. So he cannot let a potential rival like Fernan develop freely. He turns to promise his follower that as long as they stick close to him, they will reach the finish line safely and secure a high rank in this exam. Luster's eyes grow cold as he gives the order to his henchmen surrounding him. He declares that there is one pair that must be eliminated before reaching the finish line, none other than Rena Berjev and Fernan Philipberg. Luster decisively orders them to be captured alive. "That bastard is playing dirty again if I met someone like that." Meanwhile, Fan An takes the opportunity to collect every drop of the giant demon's blood into a glass vial. Seeing her teammates' actions, Rena cannot help but wonder if that is really necessary. Fan An calmly explains that this is the main ingredient to craft high-grade recovery potions. Even though Rena thinks this is just pocket change compared to the massive fortune of the Pellenberg family, to Fan An pocket change is still money. He smirks, asserting that it is thanks to that money-grabbing habit that he was able to recruit a genius like her, and this is an extremely profitable investment. After defeating 8 opposing pairs, Rena begins to anxiously urge him to keep moving because she is looking forward to the generous bonus points to rise to the top position. Fan An clicks his tongue, saying she is obsessed with grades, but Rena immediately retorts that that is still better than being obsessed with money. Her eyes dim slightly as she affirms that she has a valid reason for needing to become the top student at the academy. Everyone does everything for a reason, right? Suddenly, both freeze as they sense a thick, murderous intent surrounding them. Fan An deduces that there are at least 20 people lying in wait, and their target is none other than the 2 of them. Immediately, a series of dark shadows dive from above, attacking violently. green sword auras, and blazing red magic collide fiercely, creating a chaotic scene in the deep forest. Amidst the encirclement, a man with a pitch-black greatsword suddenly appears from above. Rina is shocked to realize that the person who just revealed himself with a confident smile is Alon Doness. Rina and Alon clash. The extremely powerful impact sends them both flying in opposite directions, but they quickly regain their balance and land on the ground in a vigilant defensive stance. Without a second of rest, they both charge at each other again, turning the training ground into a fiery battlefield. Rina's eyes are sharp and cold, surrounded by a brilliant blue sword aura, radiating suffocating pressure. Alon is no less impressive with a resolute and calm expression, deflecting every high-speed attack. The two blades lock together once again. Sparks fly as the two rivals press their weapons hard, creating the screeching sound of metal, grinding fiercely. From high above, Luster Swabian appears arrogantly holding a staff that emits a flaming dragon wrapping around his body. He coldly observes the battle of Alon and Rina below like someone holding their destiny. Just as Luster prepares to intervene, a blazing red dark magic suddenly erupts from Fan An's side, shooting straight into the sky with heaven-shaking power. The shock of the massive magical power causes both Rina and Alon to be thrown far away, forcing Luster to exclaim in astonishment. At this unexpected intervention, Luster smirks with interest, his eyes burning with ambition as he looks down at the rubble below. Fan An stands heroically with fiery red eyes filled with killing intent, controlling the red magic-infused debris flying frantically around him like a stone storm. Not letting his opponent have time to think, Luster immediately pours all his power into his staff, unleashing a massive fire attack, creating an explosive blaze that swallows the entire area in violent flames. He intends to burn everything around him. Luster clicks his tongue in surprise when he sees Fernand take out half of his pursuers in the blink of an eye. He advises Fernand to be less aggressive because this violent fighting style doesn't look like his usual self at all. Fernand just glances over and whispers to Rina that the guy in the cloak is playing king again. Regarding Luster's ambition to win first place, Fernand coldly asserts that it is impossible. Noticing that the exam time has less than an hour left, Luster proposes a peace treaty. He and Alon will take first place, while Fan An's team accepts second, so both sides can reach the finish line on time. Luster emphasizes that this is a deal, beneficial to both sides, but Fan An remains silently calculating. At this moment, Rina's anger explodes. She yells that she would rather lose in battle than cowardly give first place to someone else, without fighting a single match. Fan An calmly turns to Luster and shrugs. "You heard that right. My partner doesn't agree." "Ugh, humans are such slippery snakes, so good at shifting the blame." Luster smirks dangerously as the negotiation falls through. He immediately activates his blazing fire element magic to prepare for a real showdown. However, Fan An flashes a mysterious smile and drops a bombshell. Let's save that for later. While Luster is still bewildered and hasn't understood what is happening, a massive magic circle suddenly glows brightly right under his group's feet. The ground shakes violently and then explodes into pieces, creating pillars of giant stone shooting into the sky with terrifying power. "I told you not to be arrogant so soon. Watch out for this money grubber." Realizing he has fallen into a trap, Luster screams in panic, ordering everyone to hurry and escape. But it is too late, as the stone blocks have become a prison, trapping them inside. While the enemy is in chaos, looking for a way to survive, Fan An quickly grabs Rina's hand and urges her on. "Fan An, run, we have to go." Leaving her standing there in shock, Fan An grabbed her and pulled her away from the wreckage, heading straight for the finish line to escape the encirclement. Rina grumbled, asking why he didn't use that move sooner. He replied wearily that he was exhausted, and the technique couldn't be maintained for long anyway. Professor Grant boomed, announcing to all the students, "You all did well, now I will announce the test rankings." It sounded just like a graduation ceremony. Everyone was on edge. The crowd buzzed with astonishment when the names Rena Burchaff and Fan Ann Fulenberg were called out for first place. Rena looked incredibly smug. Whispers filled the air. "For real, aren't they the losers?" Loser could only bow his head in disappointment, forced to accept second place. Rena admitted that even though she hadn't actually defeated A-Long, reaching the top spot made her ecstatic because it was her first time. Fan Ann smiled smugly to himself, thinking that whether he defeated him directly or not, first place is still first place, and his strategy was a huge success. Professor Grant reminded everyone to prepare to return to the academy and not to wander off. Whether it was a defeat or not, first place is still first place, and his strategy had worked brilliantly. Professor Grant reminded everyone to prepare to head back to the academy and warned them not to wander off. During the break, Rena suddenly asked Fan Ann if he knew the freshman Entamion. When she revealed she had encountered Ent while he was training at Night Fan, Ann couldn't help but be stunned, asking, "Wait, you met Entamion?" Rena nonchalantly said the situation was quite interesting, just like the time he secretly watched her practice sword fighting, which made Fan Ann's expression suddenly shift, his eyes glowing red with tension. "Why am I only finding out now that you two were meeting in secret? This is important, isn't it?" Suddenly, Fan Ann stumbled and collapsed, causing Rena to call his name in worry. Another part of the prophecy suddenly flashed through his mind, Entamion reaching out to Rena, pleading, "Please become my knight," but Rena didn't take his hand. The vision suddenly turned horrific, with the sky turning blood red and the air choking with poison. Colossal demon, as if signaling the apocalypse, was aiming straight for Entamion. Fan Ann realized in shock that the story had changed. "Senior, what are you doing?" Ent shouted loudly when he saw Rena blocking his path. In the chaotic memory flashing before Fan Ann's eyes, Rena replied gently, "Entamion, you asked me before. Didn't you ask me to be your knight? Back then I refused, but not anymore." The scene changed. Rena now had a look of firm determination. "Now I know who you are, and I know what you are fighting for. This is my destiny. A knight is the sword that strikes the master's enemy, and also the shield that protects them." With a brilliant blue aura surrounding her, she courageously lunged toward the demon named Andromalius. The story shifted again. The final image that struck his eyes was Rena lying motionless in a hospital bed, with bandages wrapped all over her face. No, why is her ending so miserable? Beside the hospital bed, Ent gripped Rena's hand, sobbing, "Thank heaven. I'm glad you're still okay. You're in the hospital now." Suddenly, his eyes blazed with intense hatred. "Senior, please listen to me, and don't misunderstand." He gritted his teeth and roared, "Those bastards who want to drag you and the Burchaff family into the dirt, they're those Fulenbergs, right? Those filthy rich trash," witnessing himself being cursed directly in the vision. Fan Ann, in the present, flew into a rage and shouted, "Damn it! You dare talk about a senior like that, you brat!" He was so angry his face turned beet red and his fury flared. Rena's voice calling, "Fan Ann," suddenly echoed, pulling him back to reality. He looked around in a daze and confusion. Rena and those around him asked worriedly, "Are you okay? You suddenly fainted. How are you feeling?" Fan Ann clutched his head, embarrassed. "I'm fine. Really, I fainted." Rena advised Fan, "And maybe you should go to the infirmary. You might have overexerted yourself with energy you're not used to. To just pass out like that, your health is really concerning you, money-grubbing guy. As he stumbled away, Fan An secretly and bitterly realized, so, from this moment on, Entamion has started to see me as an enemy. But another worry hit him. Why did I have another prophecy? It all revolves around Rina. Is it showing me what's about to happen? The name that appeared in the prophecy sent a chill down Fan An's spine, Andromalius. He wondered in shock, one of the 72 demons, is he really going to descend upon this world in the near future? Well done, young master. I heard you won first place. Hai spoke up to congratulate him as soon as she stepped onto the carriage. The reply was a weary look on his face. I used up a ton of energy. I'm exhausted. Seeing his master exhausted, Hai advised him to take a nap. When we reach Labidas Hall, I'll wake you up. The sound of hooves clattered on the road back, but Fan An's mind could not escape the obsession, named Andromalius. He was the 72nd of the 72 demons possessing raven-black hair and eyes and a human form, with a snake coiled around his right arm. Even though he had scoured every book, this was all Fan An could find about this terrifying entity. Searching like this was like finding a needle in a haystack. The war with demons had faded thousands of years ago, so information about them had almost been erased from history. In this era, the existence of demons was seen as a myth because 1,000 years ago they were completely destroyed by the first emperor and had never reappeared. Fan An told himself that even without information, he would handle it all, so there was nothing to worry about. However, what troubled him most was Rina. The vision of her being severely wounded in the battle against Andromalius kept appearing clearly in his mind. Seeing Rina lying motionless with bandages in a hospital bed, Fan An hesitated, not knowing whether to tell her or not, but then he dismissed it. Because would she even believe in a warning about something that only existed in legends? Fan An, are you really okay? Rina's voice cut through his thoughts when they were walking along the academy hallway. Fan An replied briefly that he was fine, then suddenly asked, Rina, do you believe in the existence of demons? The strange question made Rina look back in confusion. Why are you interested in that? I don't even believe in ghosts. Facing Fan An's seriousness, Rina affirmed that she did believe, because the empire was founded after destroying the demons. However, when Fan An added, what if you knew they still existed on this land? Rina just looked at him with eyes full of concern. Fan An, did you hit your head during practice? Being treated like a madman, Fan An could only tell himself to forget about it. He realized that if he wanted to convince everyone, he had to find concrete evidence. But then he suddenly remembered an important event about to happen, exactly 1 month from today. During the first-year night's sparring session, Entamion defeated Varenkaubeden, the one holding second place ever since. Since that day, no one else in the academy could measure up to Ent, and while the winner is showered with praise, the loser must taste the bitterness of defeat tenfold. I trusted him, Fan An muttered, thinking of the knight Kaubedon's reputation and honor. Recalling the prophecies about Varen, he realized he had misjudged the man as well as the powerful force backing him. The final outcome was truly pathetic when Varen was possessed by a demon and lost everything. The smoldering hatred toward Entamion created a crack for the demons to slip in. This is the first time a demon has surfaced, even if only indirectly through a host. Fan An thought to himself if he knew how to exploit this event, convincing everyone and gaining their help would be much easier. He once again painstakingly calculated, determined not to go begging. With clear evidence in hand, he could use it as a foundation to expand his plan. However, the dilemma remained. Fan An still didn't know exactly when, where, or how Varen was possessed. He frustratedly wondered why this crucial piece of information wouldn't appear for him. Will it appear on its own when the time comes, or must he satisfy some mysterious condition to be able to read it? The more he thought about it, the more annoying it became. Fan An could only click his tongue in irritation while sitting in the carriage magic scripts flickering around him while, back at the dormitory, Ent was intently reading the newspaper reporting on the irregularities in the recent joint class, especially the suspicion that Fernand Philipberg was hiding his true power and the unexpected relationship between him and Rena Burchard. Ent quietly mused, they truly live up to the Philipberg name. He noted that although the Burchard house had lost its military power, it was thanks to their reputation that the showy Philipberg name even bothered to act. Anfan Fansun, the spirit floating beside him, remarked that Ent seemed quite fond of the Burchard house, while hating the Philipberg house to his core. The old man shouted, telling him not to compare the two, because the only knight capable of standing shoulder to shoulder with him and the first emperor on the battlefield was a member of the Burchard house. Anfan Fanson sighed, lamenting that nowadays people hold the Philipbergs in higher regard, calling this the era of magic swords. That also sparked a fuse. Rena is quite something, huh? The old man yelled indignantly, asserting that if it weren't for their war treasury during the 1,000-Year War, he wouldn't have bothered dealing with those nouveaux riches. Suddenly, Anfan Fanson told him to go ask Fan An for money, because his equipment looked too dilapidated. Ent was startled, asking why the old man suggested that so suddenly, and wondering if Fan An was treating him unusually kindly. Anfan Fanson warned that the Philipberg house definitely wanted to establish a connection with the Amiens house, but they would never say what they truly wanted. They would build trust to make the other party lower their guard with gold, only to eventually drag the victim into their vortex. Ent stared contemplatively at the spirit of Anfan Fanson, floating in front of him, skeptically asking, "You mean to say Fan An is approaching me with ulterior motives?" He felt self-conscious, believing his family had declined and no longer had anything for Fan An to desire. Immediately, Anfan Fanson snapped, "Why are you so insecure? Besides, his motives don't matter. What matters is that I can use him. There's that rat's tail showing criticizing others, but you'd still like their money." Even though the old man pushed him, Ent didn't believe Fernand was being kind just for benefits. In a memory full of nostalgia, Ent clearly remembered the moment they first met. That very senior had panicked and given him medicine when he was injured by a monster. Fan An's face at that moment was full of worry. He yelled, "Drink this quickly!" In Ent's eyes at the time, Fan An's expression had absolutely no calculation. He was truly worried for him. Ent sighed, asserting that asking others for money like that held no honor, because trust isn't something that can be bought with money. Anfan Fanson was so angry his face changed color. He scolded, "You truly are an annoying child." The old man kept nagging that even the first emperor once said that having a wealthy sponsor behind you is something very reassuring. Don't tell me you're turning to his side just because you were treated to a meal. The Philipbergs aren't the type to be kind just for the sake of being kind. Finally, the old man firmly ordered, "Stop arguing. Go meet him right now. Go!" The old man had no shred of dignity. "But if I can get it, I don't need that shred of dignity." Anfan Fanson was certain that Fan An would give the money as if he were waiting for Ent to ask. Standing before the majestic mansion, Ent hesitated when the butler, Hyde, stopped him at the door. Hyde coldly announced that young Master Fan An was currently managing the family's merchant guild while attending school, so he was very busy. Without an appointment, it would be hard to arrange time. Ent awkwardly asked Hyde to report back that the visitor wasn't just any guest, but that Ent Amion had come personally. However, Hyde returned and firmly stated, "I told him that the young master from the Amion house had come, but he said he was busy and invited you to return." Walking down the stone steps, Ent left, feeling dejected with a look full of disappointment. He muttered, blaming his guardian spirit for saying that Fan An would be waiting with a purse of money in hand. Ent felt regretful for bothering his senior, while he was busy causing An Fan Fansen to fly into a rage, wanting to toss him back into the dungeon. He noticed something very strange, because in his opinion, Fan An Philipberg couldn't react. Oh, so coldly. This part is a bit suspicious, huh? I think so too. But it was all just a perfectly staged performance. From the high window of the mansion, he gloated to himself. How surprising. I thought the bait this time wasn't attractive enough. I didn't expect him to reach out first. Just then, Hyde entered the room and reported, "As you ordered, I have sent Ent Amion away." Fan An smirked and nonchalantly replied, Well done." Hyde wondered why the young master had let Ent go so easily after putting in so much effort to track him carefully. Fan An was contemplative. He found it strange that Ent had sought him out so quickly. He knew well that Ent wasn't the type to easily beg, so he felt that this time he didn't come because he truly wanted to. Fan An decided to take one step back to advance 2 steps, waiting until he completely trusted him before tempting him. Regarding Hyde's doubt about the value of a fallen descendant, Fan An asserted that he possessed superior qualities and would be an invaluable assistant if he stood completely on his side. Hyde worried that letting Ent go would lose the opportunity, but Fan An had already calculated an opening. He ordered the butler to go to the main family warehouse and take all the medicinal herbs back here. Hyde was panicked because those were the Duke's precious treasures, but Fan An argued that if he gave away cheap things if it's efficient, the loss would be even greater than it is now. If you don't have enough, you don't have it to eat. To him, there is nothing in this world that cannot be bought with money. If you haven't bought it yet, it just means you don't have enough money, that's all. He gave a sinister smile, confident in the absolute power of money. In Ent's room, the boy was holding a wooden box along with a note from Enfant Faison, curiously asking if he had just met the butler of the Philipberg household. Ent shook his head, saying that person just left the items and left immediately. That old soul snatcher. He thought that an apology letter from the Philipberg family could also be considered a sign of conscience. Ent opened the letter and read, "This is the divine medicine I prepared specifically for you. I hope you accept it. Signed, Senior Fan." As soon as An finished reading, Enfant Faison exploded because of the arrogant senior title Fuin An had used. However, as soon as Ent opened the box, both were stunned. Enfant Faison exclaimed in horror, "The holy bird's heart. That is an ultimate divine medicine representing the light, the perfect thing to pair with the light swordsmanship of the Amion family. With such a temptation, who could resist that?" Enfant Faison, despite scolding Fan An for his arrogance, had to admit that Ent's trip was truly worth it. Meanwhile, Ent was deeply moved eyes, brimming with tears, thinking that Senior Fan An valued a useless person like him to this extent. He resolved to put in his best effort to not let down his senior's expectations, which made the old man, Enfant Faison, just sigh and call him a fool for not understanding the true ulterior motives of the old fox Fan An. Fan An sat leisurely in his office and softly asked about the results of the match that had just taken place. Hai immediately reported that Ent Amion had defeated Varen Kanbuner. Even though Varen's swordsmanship was slightly superior, it was the overwhelming aura of Ent that turned the tide. Fan An exclaimed in surprise, because according to the prophecy, Ent should have only won by a hair's breadth, but thanks to the divine medicine he gifted, this victory became much easier. Hai asked suspiciously if it was thanks to the young master's divine medicine that Ent won. Fan An just calmly replied, "It probably had a little effect." To the butler's questioning about whether Ent could have won even without the medicine, Fan An just gave a vague answer. No one can know for sure. In his heart, he was extremely excited because everything was happening exactly according to the prophecy, and before long, Varen would be possessed by a demon, the perfect opportunity for him to find evidence of the existence of the demon race. I'm also curious about which hole those things crawled out of. He immediately ordered Hai to closely monitor every move of Varen Kanbuner, to the bewilderment of Hai when he saw the target was not Amion. Fan An emphasized that he needed to know everything from the places Varen went, how the demon tempted him to the people he contacted. He wanted to grasp clearly the method by which a demon from 1,000 years ago could return to this world, to prepare for the upcoming events. However, Hai's subsequent reports gave Fan An a headache. Throughout 2 consecutive weeks of monitoring, there was absolutely no sign of any evil demon appearing. Fan An sat pensively on his bed, eyes glued to the surveillance reports with a look of suspicion. He muttered to himself, "Something important should have happened by now. Shouldn't it? Is Hai slacking off? Why is all the information coming back just trivial things, like what Varen eats, and why he goes to the bathroom so much? Could it be that he is meeting a demon in the bathroom?" He took his pen and scribbled his speculations. Could it be that Varen is having digestive problems due to excessive stress because of Ent, or not? A wave of anxiety surged in Fan An's heart. If the most important part of the prophecy about the demon is wrong, perhaps I must reevaluate the reliability of everything I know. Just then, a new scene suddenly appeared in his mind. After his disastrous defeat, Varen Kanbuner nursed his hatred and met Ent again in the midterm exams. With all his resentment, Varen frantically lunged at Ent as if to devour him alive. However, the outcome of this battle seemed to have been determined beforehand. Ent wasn't careless enough to lose to an opponent he had already beaten once. Under the guidance of the Great Soul, Gartner and Finson Ent's power was now at a completely different level. After knocking Varen to the ground, Ent coldly turned and walked away, without knowing the terrifying transformation taking place behind him. A dense, dark purple demonic energy began to spread, enveloping Varen's body and mind. He lay motionless, letting the darkness consume and fully absorb into his skin. So now he finally shows his face, you demon. Fan An woke up with a start, drenched in sweat, and breathing heavily from the shock of such a realistic dream. Looking at the brilliant sunlight shining through the window, he was shocked to realize he had fallen asleep. Fan An raised a hand to his forehead, feeling the exhaustion as the prophecy now haunted even his dreams. However, his eyes suddenly flashed with determination. "I've found the exact moment Varen is possessed. It's right after he loses to Ent in the midterm exams." He jumped up to search for the schedule and froze when he realized that the practical exam for the first-year knights was today. Everything was happening faster than expected because, initially, Ent and Varen only faced each other in the summer exams. Fan An muttered to himself, "Ent's victory isn't just luck. It's clearly thanks to the presence of Gartner and Faison acting as his teacher, so he goes off to catch demons to support Ent, huh?" Just then, Hai opened the door with a tray of food in his hands. "Young master, you're up early. Please have breakfast." But Hai immediately froze when he saw Fan An already fully dressed, holding his staff and activating a glowing blue magic circle right on his desk. Beside it, were his shield and sword ready. Facing the butler's bewildered expression, Fan An just smirked. "Oh, hi, perfect timing." Fan An declared decisively, "I'm going to observe the midterm exams of the first-year knights. I need someone to escort me." However, Hai immediately refused, because he had already been summoned by the Duke. Fan An clicked his tongue with regret. "Damn it, why today? Of all days, I understand. Then, I will go with someone else." Hearing this, Hai mocked, "Someone else who you don't have any friends at the academy, young master. A friend you bought with money, perhaps. Crap, who said I don't have friends?" "Well, actually, a friend bought with money, it's true." The butler was too right. How could he argue? Rina suddenly appeared at the door and asked directly, "You need someone to go with you to collect divine medicine, right?" Rina was still hesitant. "It's exam season right now. Does it really have to be today?" Fan An affirmed, "The effectiveness of the medicinal herbs will be lost if delayed." That was the reason he had to go immediately. Even though Rina complained about being busy studying for exams, as soon as Fan An offered, "If you go with me, I will waive your debt for a few months, even after graduation," she immediately cut him off. "Let's go, if not now, when else?" That was too good of a deal. On the way, Rina asked about the location and received the answer: the northern mountain region. She panicked and stopped. What, that place is being used as the midterm exam location for the first years. If students from other years enter, they will be disciplined for violating the rules. But Fan An just calmly replied with a familiar truth: "There is nothing in this world that cannot be bought with money." Rina looked at Fan An with a weary expression, realizing that he had blatantly bribed his way in. Upon learning that the person receiving the bribe was Professor Grant, she silently cursed him for being truly shameless. Conversely, Fernan looked smug. "Professor Grassling, I like that about him." Rina suddenly turned away. "I'm heading back to the dorm," leaving Fernan so shocked his face went pale. He shouted, chasing after her to block her path. "What gives? We're almost there. I told you we'd be fine. Seriously, you're a knight and you're breaking your promise." Faced with his lack of self-control, Rina calmly replied, "It's not like that. I forgot my sword." Her answer made Fernan instantly soften his tone, urging her to hurry back after getting fully prepared. The two began sneaking into the northern mountain area. Fernan warned, "We need to be stealthy so the professors and TAs don't spot us." Hiding behind thick bushes, their eyes were glued to the action on the training field, where Entamian and Varan Kanbunder were locked in a fierce sword fight. Sparks flew with every powerful clash at the peak of the match. "The climax is here, everyone's watching," Fernan muttered. "I might have bribed Professor Grant, but wandering around isn't ideal." Rina looked at him with pure contempt, mocking him for knowing it was a problem, but doing it anyway, which was even worse. Fernan just casually told her to keep living her exemplary life. He opened his map to check their position and realized Entamion was ranked second in the department, and Varan was third. Looking at the glowing dots on the map, Fernan panicked seeing them so close. "Don't tell me they're already clashing," he urged Rina to move faster, but she started scrutinizing the map in his hand. "By the way, isn't that the professor's map? A student having that is against the rules." Rina angrily asked how much he had to bribe Professor Grant. Fernan just sighed secretly, regretting whether he should have brought this crazy girl along. Suddenly, a shrill scream echoed from afar, making Fernan jump in alarm. Rina didn't hesitate, confirming it was the freshman's area, and immediately rushed to check it out, ignoring Fernan's loud warnings that it was too dangerous. Rina had already vanished behind the trees, leaving him no choice but to chase after her in vain. "Rena, where are you?" In such a hurry, they reached the spot to find a student, lying unconscious. Rena quickly checked and determined he just fainted from a monster attack. Luckily, thanks to the defensive spells on the map, he wasn't injured. Fernan stood observing the surroundings with a worried face. He sensed something very strange, because monsters in this area usually weren't this aggressive. Deep down, Fernan started to panic. "Damn it, it's starting sooner than I thought. I haven't even checked on Varen yet." A terrifying noise erupted, making the ground shake violently. Rena stopped, her eyes wide with fear as she looked ahead. "Fernan, what is happening?" Before their eyes, an entire forest region was being devastated by a monstrous power. Dust and debris filled the air amidst relentless ear-splitting explosions. Heavy footsteps suddenly resounded, making the ground shake violently again. Immediately, a giant monster with a gray, hulking body and fierce, bloodshot eyes stepped out from the brush, targeting them directly. Without a moment's hesitation, Rena drew her sword and lunged into the air, unleashing a sharp slash that tore through the monster's arm. But instead of collapsing, the monster became even more frenzied. Rena gasped in shock. "Why isn't it stopping? Its arm is severed." Its eyes glowed red with killing intent. The monster roared and charged, ignoring the blood oozing from wounds all over its body. At the most critical moment, Fernan slammed his staff, triggering an earth attribute spell. The ground exploded, and a barrage of giant, sharp, jagged rocks shot up from the earth, delivering crushing blows to the monster's massive body. Under the pressure of Fernan's chaotic flying rocks, the monster was cornered, losing its ability to retaliate. Finally, "What on earth is that?" He explained that it was called a berserk state, where a creature feels no pain and possesses strength far beyond its usual level. These berserk monsters are completely obsessed with killing every living thing they see. Deep down, he remembered the prophecy mentioning that monsters would go mad everywhere, due to the appearance of a demon. While the professors and TAs were busy dealing with the unexpected anomalies in another corner, Varen used the dark power he had just received to frantically attack Entamion. Pushed to the brink, Entamion finally truly awakened his latent power. Witnessing all the trouble hitting at once, just like in the plays, Fernan couldn't help but crack a smug smile. Fernan started gathering a glowing red magical current into his staff and ordered, "Rena, take care of that leech over there first." Seeing Fernan's attitude, Rena secretly suspected he definitely knew something. Just then, the magic map in his hand suddenly shattered and crumbled into ash, signaling that the defense system had completely collapsed. On the other side, Entamion was kneeling from exhaustion, but his gaze remained firm. Seeing the defeated opponent still screaming, "You think this is over?" Entamion turned his back decisively and delivered the final word. "Yes, it is. The match is decided. You're the loser, Varen." Varen was drowning in the darkness of defeat. Screams of, "I must win," echoed in his mind like a curse. He painfully recalled the disappointed look of Prince Loser and the humiliation of failing his family's expectations. The pressure of potentially losing his position as heir caused Varen's mind to completely collapse, pushing him into a pit of extreme envy and madness. Unable to accept the harsh reality, Varen gritted his teeth, clenched his fists, and roared in resentment, "I have to beat him." While Entamion was casually turning away, Varen suddenly lunged from behind like a madman. He gathered the last of his strength, screaming crazily, "Stand still right there, Entamion," facing the blind attack. Entamion's eyes remained frighteningly calm, perhaps even a bit contemptuous. Completely opposite was Varen's contorted face with veins bulging from anger. With just one decisive strike, Entamion easily took down his opponent again, sending him flying far away. Looking at the defeated guy lying flat on the ground, Entamion sighed in frustration. "Why, every time I see you, that guy lunges like he wants to die, doesn't he? So weak, and even after losing, he still can't accept it." The soul of An Fan Fashion floated by his side, constantly urging him ruthlessly, "He's a coward who lost the spirit of a knight. Kill him. If you let him live, he'll tarnish the honor of a knight." But Entamion still firmly refused, because he understood this wasn't a real battle, just an exam. He decided to leave Varen there for the TAs to come and take him away. Watching the whole development from afar, Rena subtly remarked that Varen wasn't actually that strong. Rena worriedly suggested that Fernan should give up on the elixir quest to leave and let the professors handle everything. But Fernan flatly refused to give up. He declared he would push through the monster swarm to head west, to Rena's astonishment. He casually reminded her that she had just taken down a berserk monster to prove they weren't invincible. Seeing Fernan so determined, Rena suspiciously asked if he had planned everything in advance, which was why he needed an escort, making him. He could only break into a cold sweat, desperately trying to deny it. She was too smart for him, and he was cornered, Rena pressing him on whether the elixir was really worth more than a life. Fan An gave a sinister smirk and shouted out loud to assert its value before dashing off. Rena could only scream at him, calling him a lunatic, and chased after him to a vacant lot. Fan An cursed under his breath, realizing he was too late, and the battle was likely already over. Just then, Rena spotted someone lying unconscious ahead. As soon as she recognized it was Varen Kanbunder Fan, Anne panicked and screamed at Rena not to go near him. Wondering why someone as strong as Varen had ended up in such a state, she intended to step forward and help, ignoring Fan An's desperate warnings. She insisted she couldn't. Just leave him lying there among the crazed monsters. But the moment she was about to touch him, a chilling wave of pressure made her freeze. Varen's eyes suddenly snapped open, glowing with a sinister demonic red. Rena recoiled in terror, shocked to see a dark otherworldly aura engulfing Varen's body. Fan An coldly confirmed that it was demonic energy, the mark of a demon. To Rena's shock, he confirmed that Varen Kanbunder had been completely possessed, and his dark soul was easily led astray by the demon. Fan An felt something was wrong. According to Varen's prophecy, after turning into a demon, he would attack Ent the moment he awoke, but it seemed his target had changed. Rena was shocked and questioned. "Are you saying a demon has borrowed Kanbunder's body to return to this world? How could you possibly know that?" Fan An could not answer. He just silently observed Varen's burning red eyes and realized clearly that he had lost all reason. Fan An decided he had to neutralize Kanbunder. He placed a hand on Rena's shoulder and told her, "Rena, try to hold him off for just 10 minutes. To her confusion, Fan An suddenly used invisibility magic, turning into a faint phantom and fading away. Rena only had time to scream in frustration, "Fan, what are you talking about?" She then gritted her teeth and cursed, "You bastard!" as she saw Varen roaring madly and charging straight at her. Rena was forced to draw her sword to fight back. She shouted, hoping to wake him up, "Kanbunder, it's me, Barchep." But the only response was the inhuman roar of the demon inside Varen. Sword strikes laced with black demonic energy clashed violently against Rena's blade. Their weapons locked together, sparks flying. Rena was stunned by the overwhelming strength of her opponent. "He's too strong. If it keeps going like this, I'm going to be pushed back." Refusing to be at a disadvantage, Rena swung her sword with great force, knocking Varen back to the ground. She lunged forward, delivering a powerful strike while shouting, trying to reach his consciousness, "Varen Kanbunder, wake up." But her efforts were met only by the frantic roaring of a soul completely swallowed by darkness. Varen's eyes glowed with a demonic red. Realizing he was no longer himself, Rina quickly leaped back to keep a safe distance. Varen was now completely enveloped in a thick, black mist radiating a suffocating evil pressure. Without a second's hesitation, Rina channeled all her magic into her sword, making it glow with a brilliant mystical blue light. Varen roared crazily then. Like a wild beast he charged straight at her. Two streams of blue and purple energy collided violently. A massive explosion erupted, blowing them both apart. Rina landed on the ground, her breathing ragged from exhaustion. She was horrified to realize her energy was being drained at a terrifying rate by the incessant dark magic radiating from Varen. Facing an enemy still drowned in darkness, Rina anxiously wondered how to turn the tide when she was running on empty. But then she realized she still had one final option. Where did that guy who lured me here to suffer disappear to? Suddenly, she saw him. "Fan and you!" She gasped when he appeared out of the shadows. He just coldly beckoned. "Over here, Rina!" Just as Varen roared, Rina kicked off his head to jump toward Fan An. She snapped angrily. "Why are you only showing up now? Why did you run away?" Fan An glanced back with glowing, mysterious red eyes. "Why? Because he's a demon. That's why." Rina kept berating him. "You ran away just to save yourself, and you still dare to call yourself a person." Meanwhile, Varen was still crazily chasing them close behind. Fan An calmly explained, "I didn't run away. I was setting a trap to take down Kanbunder because he isn't the type you can subdue with normal methods." As soon as his foot hit the trigger point, Fan An smirked. He should be in the trap now. A shockwave exploded right under Varen's feet, throwing him into the heart of the magic trap. Just when she thought he was a coward who ran away to save his own skin, he had actually been setting a trap. Seeing Varen knocked down amid the rubble and dust, Rina screamed in panic. "You didn't have to go that far." What if Kanbunder died because of that trap? Fan An remained terrifyingly nonchalant. "He can't die. Look. On the contrary, he seems even angrier." Varen stood up amid a swirling purple-black aura, bursting with more intensity than ever, radiating a suffocating evil pressure. Fan An mused to himself. "After that last bout with Kanbunder, I realized one thing. I didn't want to use this." Before Rina's startled eyes, he took out a glowing red crystal, emitting a mysterious energy, and began chanting strange spells. Fan An poured all his strength into activating the red crystal. A massive pillar of fire erupted, consuming Varen in his demonized state. The power of the high-level spell created a terrifying pressure, incinerating everything around it. In the blinding light, the game was over. That demon must be toast. Varen collapsed to the ground, completely unconscious. Fan An sighed in relief. Success. The trap worked as planned. Looking at the rubble, Rina skeptically asked, "Success?" She felt sorry for her teammate's wallet, seeing him use all that expensive gear. "The items you just used were so expensive, aren't you?" Sorry about that," Fan An admitted with a pained expression. "Of course I am, but in that situation, there was no choice." Rina clicked her tongue, saying that if they had cooperated from the start, they wouldn't have needed to spend not so much. But Fan An immediately retorted, "What are you saying? He was possessed. Didn't you see his darkened skin, those blood-red eyes, and the swirling demonic aura?" He analyzed that while he looked like a world-ending demon on the outside, at his core, he was still Varen Kanbunder. Fan An recalled how Entamen had struggled tremendously before fully awakening to defeat this guy. Suddenly he froze as a thought flashed through his mind. He waited a beat, then realized in a panic that he'd been overthinking things. Even though Ent was destined to be a savior right now, he was still just a first-year student who hadn't fully unlocked his powers, whereas Rina was a second year and clearly way stronger than him. He scolded himself for making such a stupid mistake. Rina, standing nearby, chimed in. "When I told you not to overdo it, you pretended not to hear me. Feel sorry about all that wasted money now, huh? A penny saved is a penny earned." Fan An stood there looking like he'd lost his soul. He realized that by obsessing over the devil, he'd forgotten the most important thing, Rina's actual strength. He grieved over the cost of the treasures and the super earth magic scroll he'd wasted on that trap. Seeing Fan An standing there completely dazed, Rina asked worriedly, "Your eyes look so empty, Fan An. Are you okay?" Deep inside Fan, An could only hear the sound of his wallet crying. How much did all that cost? Seriously, how much? Just then, Varen, who had been lying on the ground, started growling and tried to sit up. Still in a frenzy over his lost money, Fan An didn't care about holding back anymore. He poured all his frustration into his fist and delivered a massive punch straight to Varen's face. "That's for the money." The punch sent Varen flying and collapsing again. Fan An still wasn't done. He gritted his teeth and cursed the trashy demon that had made him burn through a fortune. Rina, standing by, could only gasp as she called his name. Is that me?" Varen stammered in shock as he looked at the recording orb. He couldn't believe his eyes seeing himself in that grotesque demonized form, screaming away. Fan An calmly added that the recording orb had captured everything perfectly and that there was absolutely no way it could be faked. Varen clutched his head in despair, unable to remember anything after his humiliating loss to Ent. Seeing this, Rina spoke up, explaining that this was exactly why Senior Fan An had to go through the trouble of explaining everything to him. She insisted that after his fight with Eren, he had been possessed by a demon and gone on a wild rampage, even though Eren stubbornly kept arguing that he'd never even met any demon. To make him understand the situation, Fan An just smirked and told him to look closely at the orb. He began to list off all the favors Varen had received from him. From taking a direct hit from a bomb and being pierced by dozens of magic arrows to being scorched by a pillar of hellfire, Fan An concluded that if it weren't for the magic aura protecting his body, Varen would definitely have been dead instead of sitting here. Hearing this, Varen shuddered, admitting he must have been incredibly lucky to have survived all those attacks. "Thank goodness I didn't meet my end. My ancestors really have my back." Fan An then started complaining about how much money and how many precious magical items he had spent to stop Varen's demon-possessed body. Hearing the word debt, Varen immediately flared up, demanding a refund for those items and even claiming compensation for his own emotional distress. Fan An immediately put on a fake tearful act, clutching his head and lamenting that he had been on the verge of death from just one of Varen's attacks and could have lost his life in an instant. Sick of the senior's theatrics, Varen snapped and asked what exactly he wanted. Fan An immediately switched back to a smug expression, pulled out a paper, and declared that the request was simple. A contract, a slave contract clearly stating that from now on, Varen Khanbunder would be the servant of Fan and Fallenberg. He just needed to sign it, and everything would be forgiven. Fan An flashed an inviting smile with the contract in his hand. Varen took the paper, his face turning pale. He shouted that this was clearly a slave contract and that these terms were way beyond what he could tolerate. Seeing the resistance, Fan An clicked his tongue, acting disappointed that his kindness was being taken for granted. While he was trying to settle things smoothly, Rina, standing nearby, could only look at Fan An with eyes full of unease, seeing him intentionally use fear to pressure the other guy. Fan An coldly threatened that if he didn't sign, he'd have no choice but to hand the recording orb over to the Purge Squad to handle according to regulations. The Purge Squad was an organization under the Emperor whose main task was to hunt down and destroy demons in the name of demon extermination. They used to hold absolute power, ready to burn anyone suspected of heresy at the stake. But after 1,000 years with demons seemingly vanished from history, they were just shadows of their past. Now they were just looking for a chance to return to the political spotlight. If they saw this recording orb, they'd be overjoyed. Varin Khanbunder panicked and yelled, "I told you I have nothing to do with any demons." Fan An calmly added that, for the crime of colluding with the devil, he'd naturally be expelled from the academy. He looked straight into his target's mind. And do you think the Marquise Khanbunder would accept a child who sold their soul to the devil? Varin completely crumbled, trembling at the prospect of being disowned by his family. With nowhere left to run, Varin had no choice but to sign the contract of destiny. He bowed low before Fan An resigned. "From now on, I will be in your care, master. I mean, senior." Once that was settled, Fan An and Rina left quietly. Watching Varin's back, as he walked away, Rina asked worriedly, "Are you sure we can handle this on our own? Shouldn't we report this to the professors?" Fan An replied briefly, "Not yet. That's quite bold of him, isn't it? I think we really should report this to the teachers," she thought. He explained that regardless of whether Varin was possessed voluntarily or manipulated the reason, why he was manipulated still hadn't been cleared up. Fan An's eyes turned sharp. And if Varin really is being controlled by someone, it means there is someone in the academy colluding with demons. He knew that if this went public too soon, they would immediately go into hiding, making it even harder to find the mastermind. Rina looked at Fan An suspiciously. "You intend to investigate this secretly?" She couldn't understand the true motives of those behind this, but why would they target academy students? Fan An mused, giving his theory, "The academy is where all the most elite talents of the empire are gathered. If they attack students here, it's no different than destroying the empire's future." Hearing this, Rina was fired up with a sense of justice. She clenched her fist, asserting, "I can't just stand by and watch this happen. If you need help eliminating demons, just call me anytime." What a kind-hearted and righteous girl. I love it. Seeing Rina's determination, Fanon smirked triumphantly to himself. Perfect. From now on, I won't have to lend her money with interest anymore. He secretly laughed, knowing she still hadn't realized what a foolish promise she had just made, and she would definitely regret it later. Meanwhile, at the academy, even though professors and assistants had been mobilized to suppress the monster riot, the midterm exams for the first-year night department had to be cancelled halfway through. An emergency notice was posted on the bulletin board. Due to safety concerns, all practical midterm exams would be replaced with written tests. This news hit like a bolt from the blue, causing the students to panic and scream in despair. What midterms are written tests? I'm dead. Because the grading system, the academy prioritizes practical skills over theory. So for students focused on combat training, having to write essays for every single subject is a massive burden. It's a huge weight, and of course Fernan is no exception. Writing is truly a nightmare. Even for me as a student, I dread exams too. Under the flickering lamp, Fernan is buried deep in a pile of books, while Anfanfashan the spirit floats nearby, mumbling, "No matter how I think about it, something doesn't feel right." Exhausted, Fernan asks, "What isn't right, Anfanfashan?" Anfanfashan analyzes that the previous monster rebellion was clearly connected to a demon because he had sensed a faint magical aura spreading everywhere, yet the real demon never showed up. Fernan wonders, doesn't that mean the demons weren't behind it? Instantly, Anfanfashan snaps, "Impossible. I've told you how many times already, and you still refuse to believe me." a demon will definitely appear. That is exactly why the first emperor assigned me here. The demons will always be targeting you. Anfan Fashan's warning still echoes in Fernand's ears while he is busy studying. At that same moment in the ravenous hall, a gut-wrenching scream pierces the quiet night. Fernand clutches his head, howling in desperation. My head! It feels like it's going to explode. Hai rushes over in a panic upon seeing the young master collapsed at his desk. Young master, what's wrong? In his daze, fragments of memories from the first-year field survival exam in the southern forest come flooding back. There, in a tranquil lake, a rare medicinal herb was hidden, and a sinister plot had been hatched to strip away all his protective layers the moment he stepped into the water. Fernand ventures deep into a dark, gloomy cave, alone, a place where without true intent, one would never find the way out. Fernand holds his breath, hiding clearly, sensing an abnormal aura before, exclaiming, I found it. Before him is a giant creature with a glowing sapphire heart crawling out from the cliff, radiating a bone-chilling cold. Anfan Fashan's spirit panics and realizes this is a holy beast urging him to run, because this is already too much to handle. During the breathless chase, Fernand accidentally discovers a vein of rare mithril ore exposed from a crack in the cliff. Old man Anfan Fashan excitedly bellows, demanding he mine every last bit, not leaving behind even a small piece. You greedy old man, though in this situation, I'm just as money-hungry. The old man explains that mithril is a metal blessed by magic, and the very sword he is holding is forged from this alloy, allowing his spirit to inhabit it. Back at the mansion, Fernand jolts awake with glowing red eyes, stunned by the information. What a metal that can contain a soul. This is mine. His greedy nature surges, making Fernand excited at the prospect of claiming the mineral vein. He immediately looks for Rina to drag her into this new scheme, but she exposes his lie about the medicinal herb from last time. Even though Fernand promises to handle all the missed lessons and even forgive the interest on the Bochep family's debt, in exchange for a week off to find the herb, Rina firmly refuses. I'm not doing it. What a cold beauty she is. Rina insists she cannot accept skipping class for a week just for some herb, then turns and leaves. Fernand can only click his tongue in defeat and plan to find someone else for his plan. Just then, a character with fiery red hair and solemn church attire appears. Long time no see, Fernand. May Mana also grant you blessings today. Rina looks at the newcomer with suspicion. Who are you? Replying to her is the radiant smile of Jace Venice, a saint with a holy aura. Jace politely greets her. Greetings, Lady Rina Bochep. May the blessings of magic be upon you. Seeing Rina with Fernand, Jace curiously asks if they are together, then turns to Fernand to ask intimately, How have you been lately? Fernand calmly replies that he is doing fine and asks about Jace's life at the academy. So they are acquaintances. Jace humbly admits he is still a first-year student and needs to learn many more things. Faced with this unexpected intimacy, Rina skeptically asks if they are truly that close. She can't believe a noble saint praised by the entire era would get involved with a money-grubbing demon like Fernand. Jace just laughs, saying she doesn't understand because she isn't a mage. Jace begins to explain the origins of the Dragon God Church, from worshipping the ancient dragon to becoming a powerful mage organization that holds the authority to recognize great mages. Even knowing the church has immense power, Rina loses patience. What does that have to do with you two being close? True, that guy wouldn't hang out with anyone except for money, would he? Jace explains that because the church needs massive financial resources to operate, and the Fillenberg family is their biggest supporter. Countless magical artifacts from the church are sent to Fernand's trading firm, binding the two parties as closely as roots to the earth. Jace triumphantly caps it off by saying, "The rich are the elders," even teasing that he is older than Rina, which makes her scowl in anger. Rina looks at Jace with suspicion, thinking to herself, "Is this guy really a saint? The way he says the word holy sounds so off-key and unserious." Seeing Jace pretending to be hurt and wiping away tears, saying he felt stung by her words, Rina just sarcastically apologizes to end it. Instantly, Jace laughs and says he was just joking, making Rina realize the strange relationship between the two and firmly ask to leave, even as Jace tries to keep her there. "We just met. Are you really leaving, Rina?" She remains determined to turn her back, not wanting to get dragged into more trouble. Two nutjobs. They really know how to annoy a lady, Rina mutters with regret before leaving. Fernan manages to call out, "If you change your mind, come back any time." Jace also doesn't forget to bless her. "With the blessings of magic, may it always protect you, Lady Bochep." The door slams shut. Fernan immediately changes his attitude, demanding, "Jace, what exactly did you call me here for?" Jace reveals that in the upcoming first-year survival training, they will be going to collect medicinal herbs, and he needs someone to assist him. Hearing medicinal herbs, Fernan becomes interested, but doesn't forget to warn Jace, "Don't you dare try to grab it all for yourself." Jace laughs, saying he isn't foolish enough to sacrifice his relationship with the Fillenberg family for just one herb, then wonders why Fernan doesn't just sneak in and take it first, a piece of cake. Fernan falls silent. "If I could do it, I already would have," he admitted. Even though the prophecy technically provided enough information to pinpoint the location, he still hadn't found the exact spot among the 7. The lake in the southern forest, where the freshmen held their field training. He recalled the past few days pouring all his magic into the lakebed to find the mana veins and the underground cavern. Water, but the results yielded no mystery at all. Trying to snatch the prize for yourself like that rarely works out, you know. He clicked his tongue, realizing the cave had been hidden by extremely sophisticated magic that normal methods couldn't detect. Fernand's gaze sharpened. He knew for certain that he had to tail Ent to have any hope of finding that place. Jace was worried because the training area was crowded and off-limits to students. Not participating in the training sneaking in, but Fernand just flashed a confident smile. He revealed that he had registered as a teaching assistant for the freshman training, leaving Jace, panic-stricken and in disbelief because the selection requirements were notoriously strict for sophomores. Fernand recalled when Professor Rosalia suspiciously asked why he was suddenly interested in his academic performance and the change in his behavior. He simply brushed it off, asserting that what he was doing wasn't breaking any rules, so he had successfully obtained permission. Zeus nodded, applauding Fernand's plan. A true merchant through and through. The plan was airtight, not a single flaw to be found. When asked if he would participate, this saint made his conditions known with a meaningful wink. "As long as you promise me plenty of those things, I'll give it my all." He even demanded to draft a clear compensation agreement beforehand, leaving Fernand to silently marvel at the kid. He really is meticulous. Meanwhile, at the freshman field training, Entamion was focused on reviewing his targets, searching for medicinal herbs at Faden Lake in the west. Ent was also looking for fish for Fernand. "Just fishing nice and easy, take your time." He told himself to make it all look like a coincidence to avoid suspicion, so at first he just pretended to wander around. Just as he was calculating, Ent suddenly froze when he heard the whispering of the students nearby. "Look, that's Senior Fernand. I think he's a teaching assistant too." The freshman couldn't help but wonder why a wealthy young master would go out of his way to be a teaching assistant, assuming he was just gunning for extra credit. Ent was just about to call out to the senior, but Professor Grant shouted loudly, ordering the assistants to their posts to start the training session. After 30 minutes, Ent was saddened that he hadn't managed to greet him. The sole enfant fashion grew annoyed. What do you like about that effete rich kid anyway, in a secluded corner deep in the forest? Jace had finished preparing the disguise and demanded, "Now give me some of your blood and mana." As soon as Fernan agreed, Jace performed a type of transformation magic, using a small drop of blood on him. Jace boastfully asked, "Looks just like him, doesn't it?" He confidently bragged that he used to be at the top of his class and often used this trick, to sneak out without the Pope noticing. Facing Fernand's skepticism about being able to fool a legendary archmage, Jace admitted that while he couldn't completely pull the wool over their eyes, it was enough to make the Pope take a few hours to realize the truth. Students really do find every way to skip class and slack off. Fernand sighed genuinely, thinking Jace was a genius, to be able to deceive even an archmage. He figured that Jace would certainly become a powerful asset for Ent later on, but the strange thing was, the prophecy didn't mention this name at all. Why was such a talented individual from the Dragon God Church overlooked? Everyone knew that this church hated the demon race to an extreme degree. Everything started from the time a demon arrogantly mocked that their magic didn't come from dragons, but was power born from the demons themselves. That blasphemy caused the church to rise, in rage, turning them into a fanatical organization dedicated to hunting and exterminating demons without mercy. Fernand wondered if Jace would eventually become Ent's ally, and considered investing early in this potential stock. Cutting through his train of thought, Jace instructed him to remember to return within 5 hours. Fernand nodded, trusting him, then silently donned his cloak and left. He stealthily followed, the tracks in the forest quietly observing the target's every move from behind the ancient trees. He started fishing. "I wonder what I'll catch this time." Fernand realized Ent was heading west towards the unique Fa Den Lake. He wore a scheming smile, whispering, "It's your turn now. That's it. Just do exactly what I told you, and it'll be fine." Immediately after, a small noise drew attention, causing Ent to startle and freeze. He was stunned to see a familiar figure, standing and waiting in the middle of the deep forest. Looking at the other's tense expression, Ent blurted out in confusion. Ent stared at his opponent, his voice filled with sarcasm. "What is it, Varen? Don't tell me you want to try again. You know full well it's impossible, right?" Facing that dismissive attitude, Varen gritted his teeth, seething in his heart, cursing, "I know you jerk, but I don't want to keep looking this pathetic." Everything stemmed from Fernand's coercive orders earlier at the mansion. When ordered to tail Entamian, throughout the field training, Varen had been incredibly confused about why he had to do something so meaningless. Immediately, Fernand exuded a terrifying pressure, with eyes as red as if he wanted to devour the other person alive. "It seems you still don't understand the situation. Do you need me to switch you to hell mode?" Faced with the senior's terrifying threat, Varen could only tremble and beg in fear. Back to the present in the middle of the forest, Varen shouted with determination, "I cannot accept defeat." Ent was still calm, asking back, "Twice wasn't enough for you?" Varen roared, asserting that even if it were 2 or 200 times, it would be the same, because losing had completely buried his honor. He decisively drew his sword, his entire body radiating a blazing aura, and declared he would fight Ent once more, to reclaim his lost honor. "So stubborn, truly stubborn. You haven't seen the coffin, so you haven't shed tears, huh? Should I just go over and give him a few more hits?" Witnessing that tenacious will, the sole enfant fashion excitedly blurted out, "Oh, an unyielding spirit, despite the earlier defeat. I didn't care at first, but now I see he truly is a wonderful knight. Ent, accept his challenge." However, Ent maintained a cold and calm expression. He reminded his opponent that this training session strictly prohibited duels between contestants. Varen brushed aside all rules. He yelled in his agitation, "It doesn't matter, I'm fighting. For honor. What rules a knight must seek honor? Fight me." Anfan Fashion also stood on the opponent's side, continuously berating Ent, saying he was truly trampling on the courage of a real knight. Hiding behind a nearby tree, Fernan wore a sinister smile while observing the chaotic scene. "You're truly trampling on the courage of a real knight." Hiding behind a tree nearby, Fernan let out a sinister smile as he watched the chaos unfold. He smiled with quiet satisfaction, noting that no matter how much Varen whined, he was doing a great job stalling so he could carry on with his plans. "I have to worry about my own business first." Fan An quickly broke away, leaping through the ancient treetops toward the lake in the middle of the clearing. The area was deserted. He carefully scanned his surroundings and muttered to himself, "No one's here and the barrier is already set. Now, even if I dig up this whole place to find Miss Rin, nobody will." Worried about making too much noise, he flashed an excited grin, thinking to himself that it was finally time to use this kind of magic, since time was running out before End caught up Fan. An decisively placed his hand on the ground, activated a massive magic circle glowing with purple light, and muttered, full of schemes, "I really want to test this out. Summon my servant. This is the pinnacle of magical engineering infused with the massive amount of money I have invested." An entity of overwhelming power gradually emerged from the intense stream of energy. As the light faded, a giant golem with a sturdy stone body and glowing purple eyes appeared. Fan An was thrilled and cheered. "It's a golem." He didn't hesitate to point at the giant and loudly named him, "From now on, you're James," standing next to his first brainchild Fan. And excitedly waved a flag to assert his ownership and ordered, "Let's go, James. It's time to find Miss Rin. He sure has a lot of hidden talents, plus having tons of cash makes. Everything goes smoothly, doesn't it?" While Fan An was celebrating his plan on the other side, End was going through some extremely annoying moments. Varen had by now abandoned all pride, lying on the ground, hugging End's leg tightly and screaming, "Don't dare to take another step unless you defeat me, you heartless jerk. I've tried so hard to get this far, and you're just standing there watching." End could only hold his head in frustration at this leech-like clinginess. "This is so annoying. Enough, Varen. Stop acting like a child." Stung by the truth, Varen gritted his teeth and snapped back. "You think I want to be like this? At least an hour. If you can't hold out, your life is as good as over." Fan An's haunting threat still echoed in Varen's head. Returning to reality, End couldn't help but be shocked by his opponent's bizarre words. "What did you just say?" Varen's face was beet red, shouting excitedly, "I love doing this. I love it. I absolutely love the feeling of being trampled on and having my life ruined. I'm obsessed with it. Hurry up and attack me, you bastard." Watching his opponent's perverted expression, End could only shudder in disgust. What the hell is this? What demon has possessed him this time? Must be the money demon pulling the strings, right? Unable to take it anymore, End delivered a powerful kick, sending Varen flying. "What kind of pervert are you?" Despite the heavy impact, Varen bounced back up and roared with pride. "That's right. I'm a pervert, so hurry up and attack." However, as soon as End was out of sight, Varen immediately changed his attitude, stealthily taking out his watch to check. "I can't take it anymore. How long has it been?" The senior Fan An told him to hold out for an hour. Seeing that the watch hand had passed an hour and 10 minutes, Varen slumped down crying with relief. "I'm saved." His mission to stall End was finally a success. By now, End had ventured deep into a dark cave beneath the waterfall, even though the spirit Anfan Fashion never stopped nagging. Endamyun, can you really turn a blind eye to a knight's plea? Is that what you've learned? End calmly replied, the rules clearly state no, at fighting during training. Anfan Fashion continued muttering, this cave, huh? If you hadn't actively searched, you'd never have found it. That was obvious. If it were easy to find, it would have been stolen long ago. Careful, it might have been stolen a while ago, and you don't even know it. Stepping into the cold water inside the cave, End felt something, but I feel like there's something here. The spirit Anfan Fashion also suddenly turned alert. I sense an energy that doesn't belong to a spirit herb. Looking down. From a high rocky ledge, End cast his gaze toward the bottom of the rushing waterfall. Amidst the dark space spirit, herbs glowing with a magical blue light were blooming on the damp rocks. We hit the jackpot, End exclaimed excitedly upon seeing the treasure. At the same time, deep in the cave under the lake, Fan An was also grinning with such glee that his face turned red. With the help of the golem James, who was constantly punching through the cave walls, he shouted in a frenzy, "Found it! It's Miss Rin! Finally caught! A big fish! Ha ha!" But his joy didn't last long when he realized the real trouble lurking. Even though he saw the spirit herb right in front of his eyes, he froze when he discovered a difficult problem. We found the spirit herb, but how? Oh, are we supposed to harvest it? A giant sea dragon with blue scales was coiled up guarding the middle of the lake surrounding his target. The spirit Anfan Fashion had to click his tongue in dismay at the unexpected sight of a sea dragon guarding the spot. He advised End to retreat and wait for another opportunity because the current situation was too dangerous. However, with excessive overconfidence, End came up with a reckless plan to try and battle it immediately. He was scolded straight to his face by Anfan Fashion, saying if he did that, the dragon would get a taste of human meat today. The old man asserted firmly that with his current strength, he absolutely could not handle this creature. Just then, violent tremors began to echo, shaking the entire cave. It probably smelled the meat. There, run quick. The tremors caused large rocks from the cave ceiling to collapse. A brilliant blue light suddenly flashed from the sea dragon's eyes, signaling that it had officially awakened from its long slumber. Anfan Fashion panicked and shouted, "This is bad! It's awake!" The monster opened its mouth and let out an earth-shattering roar, radiating a suffocating pressure that made the surrounding space chaotic. End stood frozen in amazement as he saw the massive figure of the sea dragon rising high. Facing the overwhelming power of the legendary creature, he could only tremble, asking himself what he could do to escape this life-or-death situation. The spirit Anfan Fashion shouted, urging him, "It's come to this, just take that thing down." Just as End drew his sword ready to fight, the old man panicked and changed his mind upon seeing the monster's massive size. "I said stop. It's completely out of your league. You and I need to run first." "Ugh. Your plan changes as fast as a weather vane. Damn it, who could possibly handle this?" Anfan Fashion, run. Don't look back, just run. I could only break into a cold sweat and respond, "Geez, I don't think we can make it anymore. There's no way out." He put his all into a massive leap, swinging his sword straight at the dragon's hulking body. End's eyes burned with resolve as he poured every ounce of mana into his blade. The sword unleashed a brilliant blinding flash, but the dragon's steel-hard scales stopped the attack dead in its tracks. Suddenly, the monster whipped its massive tail around like a bolt of lightning. End only had time to let out a pained groan before being sent flying. He crashed into the water, his breathing ragged, but he kept his grip tight on the hilt and forced himself up. His cold, sharp eyes tracked every movement of the legendary creature. The sea dragon opened its maw, gathering a massive amount of water mana that spiraled into swirling vortexes. The pressure was suffocating. Realizing the next attack would be a finisher, En began to activate a golden aura that engulfed his entire body, preparing to face the destructive power head-on. I don't know if he'll make it past this water dragon. The sea dragon spewed a colossal pillar of water like a cyclone. The extreme pressure flooded the entire cavern. Amidst the roaring waves, En stood tall. The sword in his hand radiated divine light, directly absorbing the full force of the ancient dragon's breath. En was being completely overwhelmed by the giant sea dragon. His body was repeatedly tossed around by the creature's powerful tail swipes. Hearing the tremor echoing deep into the cave, Fan stopped suspicious. "Huh, so noisy. Did the sea dragon wake up?" he muttered, puzzled, because he clearly fed it a pile of meat soaked in a heavy-duty sedative. There's no way it woke up that early. Holding the glowing mithril chunk in his hand, Fan started to worry. "Ian, you better not be having trouble with the sea dragon," he told himself. Because he was so busy dealing with the guy possessed by a demon, Ian had missed his chance to awaken, according to the prophecy. This made Fan uneasy. However, looking at the box containing the treasure in his hands, he reassured himself, "But I already gave it the phoenix heart, right? It'll be fine, surely." Fan muttered, then turned to order his golem. "James, we've mined it all right. Right. Time to pull out." While Fan was retreating with a sack full of mithril on James's back on the other side, End was struggling with all his might to climb up the slippery cliff face amidst the thick smoke and dust. After a long effort to escape the danger, he collapsed panting in exhaustion. "I almost died back there." The soul of Fashion hovered nearby and just kept nagging. "That's why I told you to run." End argued that he wanted to run, but that sea dragon acted like it wanted to eat him alive. And Fashion scolded him for being a reckless idiot, insisting that if the ground hadn't collapsed from the battle's shockwaves, letting him escape, End would have already been sitting in the dragon's belly. Hearing him boast about holding his own quite well, the old man also had to admit, "Thanks to that rich guy's phoenix heart, your spiritual energy has really grown strong." "Yeah, that's true." Looking up at the high cliff, he breathed a sigh of relief, seeing the spirit herbs were still intact, but then felt discouraged because they grew in such a high spot. Climbing back up would surely take a lifetime. What a waste can see it, but can't take it, such a shame. "Ian, go in there. I feel something strange coming from that direction." And Fashion suddenly urged. End asked confused, "Huh, but I don't feel anything at all." The old soul snapped, forcing him to move immediately. "Stop talking and get over there." End had no choice but to trudge along. The sound of his boots hitting the dry stone echoed in the dark space. Advancing deep into the corner of the cave, he was still, full of doubt. "Here, the place where you felt something strange, but there's nothing here." However, and Fashion still insisted firmly that something was definitely hidden there. End started, losing his patience. "Fine, let's just grab the herbs and get out quickly." Just then, and Fashion noticed something unusual and shouted, "Look, there's light coming out from there." A crack on the cliff face suddenly glowed with a mysterious blue light, leaving End astonished. "You were right. What is that? Dig it up! Quickly, hurry up!" the old man urged frantically. End hurried to use his hands to dig through the dirt and rocks, pulling out a brightly glowing object, and shouted, "I got it!" Holding the treasure in his hand, End gasped. "This is..." The whole cavern lit up with powerful energy, making the soul of Fashion so excited that his eyes shone like stars because he had finally found what he had been longing for. Meanwhile, in a corner of the forest, Jace Venice, with his fiery red hair, was smiling triumphantly when he saw Fan An return. He eagerly asked, "So did you find what you needed?" Fan An nodded in confirmation and asked back about the situation on Jace's side. The saintly youth nonchalantly replied that there were only a few monsters gone mad causing trouble, but nothing to worry about. Looking at Jace's satisfied face, Fan An played his trump card. My merchant group will place an order with the church today. It's an order according to the previous contract. Hearing about the lucrative business, Jace cheered in excitement. Fan An casually said goodbye. Well then, see you later, Jace. Jace waved, his hand enthusiastically not forgetting to send the blessing of mana to his generous boss, then left. Fan An sat perched on a tree branch twiddling the sparkling piece of mithril he had just found and secretly marveled. I never expected to get mithril. This is a metal so rare that most people never see it in their entire lives. With its extreme ability to absorb and conduct mana, mithril is truly an invaluable treasure. But if used alone, it still can't reach its full potential. Truly a businessman, he has to exploit everything to the max. He knew clearly that he needed to create an alloy to truly activate its power. And of course, not just any common ore can pair with it. The thing that matches mithril best is adamant, the hardest metal of all. However, adamant is just as rare as mithril, to the point where even money can't buy it. Fan An pondered, wondering if the prophecy mentioned the place where this legendary metal is buried. While he was lost in thought, a shrill scream echoed, "Save me!" But Fan An's mind at this moment seemed filled only with the name adamant, to the point where he still calmly sat, motionless, even though the cry for help rang out right next to him. Right below the tree, a girl with vibrant orange hair was desperately running away from the pursuit of a pack of ferocious hellhounds. Seeing Fan An still ignoring her, the girl shouted in frustration, "Teacher, are you going to keep ignoring me like that? I said help." Fan An glanced slightly and replied in a nonchalant tone, "Of course, if you're in danger, I have to help. But an elf being threatened by a hellhound." The girl nimbly leaped up to the branch where Fan An was sitting in hiding, leaving those hellhounds growling ferociously down below. Luckily, they don't know how to climb trees, or I'd be dead meat. I'm afraid of dogs too. I should just take care of these noisy mutts. "Go, Fan An," he calmly ordered, while perched casually on a tree branch. Immediately, the elf girl performed expert hand gestures, conjuring flows of wind as sharp as blades that swept across the ground. In the blink of an eye, the pack of hellhounds was scattered. Once the cleanup was done, she turned to him and asked triumphantly, "Happy now, and by the way, did you seek me out on purpose?" Fan An just gave her a cold glance, making her quickly laugh it off. No, it was just a coincidence. Seeing Fan An decisively shoo her away, she awkwardly admitted that she was indeed intentionally looking for him, because his personality was just too hard to approach. Fan An smirked and countered, "Why, because I'm a descendant of a great noble, so you want to cozy up to me." Ah, he thought to himself, I've got her pegged. He had figured out her motives. That girl was Arya Fridian, an elf with a mesmerizing appearance. Fan An didn't hesitate to expose her, saying he had heard rumors that she often flirted, to get close to descendants of other great noble families. Being called out on it, Arya didn't show any embarrassment. Instead, she added, "Well, now that you know, let's be friends." Fan An flatly refused with a cold no, leaving her stunned as she asked for the reason. He casually replied that it was because he was older, making Arya only able to complain and beg him not to be so strict. She began using logic, saying it would be better for the future if the great noble families got along. She's quite the social climber, isn't she? Playing it like this. Then, who are poor folks like us supposed to hang out with? Fan An maintained his firm attitude, arguing that being great nobles didn't mean they had to be close. Arya explained that, because the Phrygian family had only just risen to power replacing the Birchep house not long ago, she really wanted to build good relationships with other nobles. She pleaded with Fan An to be a bit kinder and mentioned that his class also had high-caliber figures like Entamian. Seeing the look on Arya's face, Fan An secretly wondered if an elf could live solely by eating meat, then received the answer that she also ate fruit. Seeing Arya's radiant smile, Fan An sighed softly, realizing she didn't care at all about who would be the one paying for those meals. He secretly judged that Arya Phrygian was truly shameless beyond compare. Just as Arya was enthusiastically declaring her desire to be friends with all the great nobles, both of them were startled by an unexpected incident. A student with a panicked expression screamed from below, demanding that everyone hurry and get a professor immediately. A sea dragon had just appeared, right in this Padden lake. Immediately after the surface of the lake exploded, a giant sea dragon with glowing blue eyes and sharp teeth rose from the water amidst violent columns of waves. Arya exclaimed in surprise, "A sea dragon! How strange! Why would it suddenly appear?" Fan An didn't answer. He immediately leaped down from the tree branch, leaving her only enough time to reach out. "Hey, are you seriously planning to run?" Into that, inside Fan An's mind, was a tangled mess. He gritted his teeth. Damn it, something is wrong. He was shocked to realize a serious deviation from what he knew. The prophecy made absolutely no mention of a sea dragon rising from the water and going berserk. And who's to blame for it going berserk? His mind was focused on only one person. What about Ian? In the distance, the giant sea dragon was spewing a powerful glowing blue breath that shook the ground violently. The scene turned chaotic as the panicked students fled. An emergency evacuation order was loudly issued. All first-year students retreat. Teaching assistants protect the first-year students on the front line. Amidst the debris, Anfan Fashion warned, "I fear the monster is targeting you because of the spirit potion you just took." The old man urged, "Leave it to the professors and assistants to handle. Let's just retreat." End replied briefly, "Understood." They quickly looked for a way to escape with Anfan Fashion. Even though the old man had warned him to be careful and not get noticed, the sea dragon's glowing blue eyes had locked onto its target. Just as the monster was about to land the killing blow, Fan An suddenly lunged forward, shielding End with a pair of red, determined eyes. He activated a giant magic circle that emitted a blazing energy engulfing the entire area. He had arrived just in time to save the main character's life. Fan An muttered a spell, funneling all his mana into the decisive attack. Huge, sharp stone pillars from the ground suddenly shot up, piercing through the tough scales and lodging straight into the massive body of the sea dragon. Seeing the legendary beast still wildly fighting back despite its injuries, Fan An gritted his teeth and asked himself, "Damn it, is this whole thing beyond our capabilities?" "Hold the line! Well done, Fan An, now leave the rest to us!" Professor Grass's voice rang out with authority. Immediately, he and the other mages unleashed extremely powerful magic attacks, raining them down directly and forcing the sea dragon into a defensive state. Overwhelmed by collective power, the giant monster roared once and then started to flee. The students cheered excitedly. "Oh, it's running away, chase it!" Fan An breathed a sigh of relief. He silently pondered, "How strange. Did my interference change the content of the prophecy a little?" No, even so. He reassured himself that the fact the destined hero was still safe was the most important thing, because if Ian died, all his investments would go up in smoke. Doing business means having to make a profit, You can't let your capital vanish. Fan An approached and asked, Ent, are you? All right. Contrary to his nonchalant appearance, Ent looked at his senior with teary-touched eyes. Did you come to save me? Seeing the emotional face of his junior, Fan An awkwardly explained that protecting students was actually just the duty of a teaching assistant. Seeing that the situation had stabilized, Fan An told Ent to continue his work, and then intended to turn and leave. But suddenly, Ent held him back with a hesitant look. Actually, I have something to say. Are you free for a moment? Facing Ent's hesitation, thinking that talking here was a bit awkward, Fan An nodded in agreement, finding a quieter corner to talk. The two stepped into a secluded corner of the forest. Fan An crossed his arms and asked bluntly, Don't worry, no one can hear us. Just say whatever you need to say. What do you want to talk about? Ent hesitantly asked if Fan An's merchant guild dealt in advertising. Seeing Fan An confirm it, Ent honestly admitted that he was currently dirt poor, so he certainly didn't have the money to buy anything, but conversely, he had something to sell. Ugh, the miserable poor fate of the main character. He couldn't refute that, but why did it sound so bitter? Fan An's unintended comment made Ent feel deeply insulted because of his poverty. He was startled and regretted his slip of the tongue, blurting out his true thoughts. Looking at Ent's pitiful expression, Fan An silently reminded himself not to be complacent, because this very kid who was acting so obedient would be the one to get him expelled in the future. He told himself there was no benefit in angering this savior. If my words offended you, I apologize. I didn't mean it. I hope you don't take it to heart. I was just joking. Fan An hurriedly backed down to soothe the tense atmosphere. Faced with his senior's unexpected sincerity, Ent could only ask blankly, again, while the soul of an Fan fashion stands right there, muttering and scolding. Fan An for being a spoiled brat and calling that old man a troublemaker who just loves to add fuel to the fire. Fan An quickly turns around. Back to the main point, he presses. So you're saying you have something you want to sell to me? N smiles slightly and confirms, yes, exactly. It's this. As soon as N opens his palm, a radiant deep blue crystal appears, leaving Fan An completely frozen. In his mind, he's screaming in pure astonishment. He cannot believe his own eyes, because just moments ago, he was scratching his head trying to figure out how on earth he could find this legendary metal, and now it's just sitting there right in front of him. Fan An struggles to contain the excitement surging within him, telling himself to stay calm. How could he have such absurd, unbelievable luck? Trying to hide his shock, Fan An asks again to be sure, Adamantite, you're actually going to sell this to me? After N nods in confirmation, he keeps questioning the origin of the treasure, since this isn't exactly something you find lying on the street. N scratches his head, looking a bit awkward. He admits he can't easily disclose where he got it, but he swears it wasn't stolen or obtained illegally, so he tells his senior not to worry. He then adds another line that makes Fan An want to fall over. I have so much of it that my subspace inventory is already full. Wow, he really lives up to his name as the main character. Whatever happens, happens. Fan An is left speechless, silently confirming that there is no doubt and must have found it in that underground water cave. While he was busy mining mithril, he bitterly realizes that while he had to work so hard just to get a little mithril, N managed to stumble upon an entire massive mountain of adamantite. Fan An can only lament the heavens at the so-called main character luck of N. He wonders what kind of cave could possibly contain the two rarest metals on the continent like that. N starts to lay out his terms. If you are truly interested, my condition is... Immediately, the soul of an Fan fashion appears with a wary look on his face. He screams at N, warning him to be careful, saying those Philipsburg people could steal the nose off your face in a heartbeat. He firmly demands that N must not agree to any negotiations, but N completely ignores the old man's advice, thinking to himself that those terms actually sound pretty reasonable, to the utter astonishment of both N and the guardian soul. Fan N firmly closes the deal. "All right, done. I'll buy it on those exact terms." Before anyone could react, the old sword spirit is already overreacting, saying he's a man of his word. And Fan Fashion stands there with his jaw dropped, unable to believe his ears. What the hell, did he really just accept my conditions? Even Anne finds it strange. He wonders why N didn't put it up for auction to get a higher price instead of selling it directly to him. N thoughtfully explains that he wants to get rid of it as soon as possible because adamantite is so rare that if rumors spread, he would immediately become the target of countless greedy and evil people. He honestly admits that the Amion family currently isn't strong enough to protect a treasure of this magnitude. Fan Ann raises an eyebrow and retorts, "And you think I am strong enough?" He even says it half jokingly, half seriously, presenting a dangerous hypothetical. What if I just kill you and steal all the adamantite and just laughs it off? He brings up how Fan Ann had given him the heart of the holy bird and even risked his life fighting the sea dragon to save him, so he absolutely trusts that his senior would never harm him. Looking at N's bright, trusting smile, Fan Ann suddenly feels a bit touched. He thinks to himself that saving him and giving him those gifts earlier really did yield a not-so-small profit in terms of trust. He hit the jackpot this time. Gaining his trust means he won't have to worry about becoming a beggar anymore. Heh heh heh. Fan Ann walks closer, places a hand on N's shoulder with a friendly smile, and asserts, "That's right, N. I truly do care about you." Seeing N nod in agreement, he starts playing mind games, reminding him of his favors. "After all, I'm the one who saved your life from the sea dragon, right?" As soon as N replies, "Yes," the atmosphere suddenly becomes heavy. Fan Ann leans in close to the younger boy's ear, his eyes glowing red with a clear threat. "So, N, if one day you ever get the urge to turn me into a beggar, just remember today. Never forget that I risked my life to save you. Understand?" Terrified by the immense pressure, N can only stammer, "Yes, of course." Fan Ann instantly returns to his usual friendly self, laughing loudly and promising to prepare a contract to follow up later. He leaves N still reeling from the shock. "Man, that was scary, wasn't it? He just randomly threatened me about the future, telling me not to turn him into a beggar. How crazy is that?" Standing there staring at his senior's back, N mutters to himself, "What did he say just now? The urge to turn me into a beggar." He thinks, this guy is insane. He must have been shocked after seeing all that adamantite. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Hai has just returned from his trip to the Duke's estate. He walks quickly into the room and speaks up, "I'm back, young master. You've been at the Duke's estate for quite a while. Did anything happen while you were gone?" As soon as he finishes, Hai freezes and drops his file folder upon seeing the scene before his eyes. Fan Ann is casually sitting atop a literal mountain of glowing blue crystals that fill the entire room. He takes a sip of wine and greets the butler. "Oh, Hai, you're back. Welcome. First time you've seen mithril and adamantite in one place, right?" Hai stammers, unable to believe his eyes. "My lord, what is all of this? You saw Mitrin and Adamang together, didn't you?" "Two." He stammered, unable to believe his eyes. "Sir, what is all of this?